Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1109 of the War News stream. And today we have yet even more big news that Germany is warning of a possible early Russian attack on NATO forces. Also, Iran is doubling down and escalating its threats against the United States over the nuclear weapons program. And also, there's a Ukrainian attack imminent on the Crimean Bridge, according to Ukrainian intelligence. Today's a big news day, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear that there have been major explosions across the Russian Federation overnight, from the regions of Voronezh, Ryazan, and even southern Voronezh as well. We've been able to see the Ukrainian drones have been impacting those areas and causing significant damage to Russian war industry and war-fighting abilities as of today. We were also able to see that the Russian Federation conducted a failed surprise attack inside the Kursk oblast named Operation Pipe Dream, as it appears that the Russians used a pipe to try and crawl into the city of Sudzha and take it from within. They got greased, much like the oil that was passing through those pipes not that long ago. But nevertheless, we were also able to hear of other major news in other areas of the world, as Iran appears to be not backing down off their claims that they will continue their nuclearization. Now, we've also been able to hear that yesterday, the beginning of the Syrian civil war, the second Syrian civil war that is, nearly 1,000 civilians and armed rebels were killed by Zelenskyy forces in what can only be described as an absolute massacre. Meanwhile, we have also been able to see that inside of Germany, the German government is now warning of threats that the Russians most likely will be making here, where they may end up attacking NATO to test its resolve. We have also been able to hear about major Ukrainian frontline actions as the Ukrainians continue to push back the Russians in Torrensk and are also pushing the Russians back away from the city of Pokrovsk even still. We have a massive amount of news today. It's actually quite a significant amount of it. I cannot even deny it, and I cannot even protest, because it is a huge amount, and we have a load of news to cover at this point. But moving us on into that first piece of news, that juiciest news inside the Russian Federation, we've been able to hear that the Russians are not doing that well at all. It appears that they're doing fairly poorly because the Ukrainians have conducted another major drone attack overnight, and we were able to see that the Russian Federation has suffered significant damage all the way from Ryazan and all the way down to the city of Taganrog and the very western region of the Rostov-on-Don Oblast. We have been able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces once again are showing that the drone attacks are beginning to pile up a large amount, an extensive amount of damage onto Russian war industry and vital infrastructure that continues to allow the Russian Federation to keep their war-fighting efforts running. And we were able to see, starting off in Taganrog and working our way up towards Ryazan, which really is the cherry on top of the day, we were able to see that within the town of Taganrog, Ukrainian drones were coming in and coming in hot. And we were able to hear that in this clip right here. They're racing in.
Damn. Oh,
And they got
God. That guy was running like it was going to hit next to him, but it was like a mile away.
It was a good country mile, and he was running, dude, like it was coming down on him. I gotta agree. But we do not know the exact damage that has been caused in Taganrog at this point. There are several facilities in Taganrog that could be targeted and stricken by Ukrainian forces over the course of this attack. So for the moment, we're not even going to be trying to estimate or guess what the actual damage is, because we'll most likely be getting that information, quite honestly, really most likely within just the next 5 to 6 hours, as daylight will start to rise over the city of Taganrog. It's about to at this point, but usually the pictures of the actual damage and the damage reports come out about a couple of hours after the sun rises, so around 8 or 9 o'clock on their time locally. So we most likely will see all of the damage reports coming out here only within the next few hours, and then we'll be able to tell you all what exactly was hit inside of Taganrog and what was damaged. Right now, we are not hearing of any reports of any kind of a large or significant burning fire that's coming from the area that would suggest that it's an oil storage facility, so we do know that at least it's not an oil storage facility. It may have been one of the airfields surrounding the city of Taganrog, as there is a decent strategic airlift wing that is based out of the northern area of the city of Taganrog, or it could be this refurbishment facility that's down near the southern region of Taganrog that has been used to modify and produce certain kinds of aircraft over the course of the Soviet Union and the Russian Federation's military history. But moving on from that area of Taganrog and out of the Rostov-on-Don Oblast and a little bit further on north and up into the area of Bertolinovka inside the Voronezh Oblast, we were able to see that the Russians didn't have a great day at the distillery today. Many of y'all know that Russian life lives and breeds of vodka, or largely any kind of distilled alcohol. Distilled alcohol is an important thing in the Russian Federation, and historically, in the times of the Soviet Union, vodka in itself was actually used as a form of informal currency in bartering and exchanges. Sometimes, parents would invest in a college fund for their child by saving up a large amount of vodka and then actually giving it to the college dean so that way they would accept their son or daughter into that university. I'm not kidding, you can pull that up, that's actually something that would happen often. But nowadays, vodka still has a fairly significant presence inside of the Russian Federation, but not as significant as the times of the Soviet Union. Nowadays, people just get wasted on it. But beyond that, in Bertolinovka, it appears that they weren't just distilling alcohol for the purposes of getting wasted, they were distilling alcohol for purposes of wartime production. Certain kinds of distilled alcohol or distilled products are actually used in certain kinds of I guess you could say, military applications, especially in the medical world of dealing with combat injuries and the wounded, but it's also used in some other instances as well to make sure to clean off other kinds of items, ammunitions, and supplies and such things, and to also give frontline soldiers a little bit of something extra to sanitize any kind of wounds with. But we can see right here that that facility appears to be going up right here. You can see a little toasty flame out there in the horizon. You can also see a little flash there for a moment. Weirdly enough, this video just does not have audio, so it's not like we're muting it. It just does not. But we can see some flashes coming from the distillery over there in Bertolinovka, and it appears that the Russians are going to not be getting sauced anytime soon.
That's a big loss for them. They can't get sauced. They can't forget about all the losses they're taking. The morale could go low.
Man, I gotta say, man, it's a very sad thing, and it appears that the town of Bertolinovka will be having to move on into their second industry, which is providing meat for the meat grinder out there in Kursk. But moving on from the area around the town of Bertolinovka, and a little bit further on up and into Lipetsk, we were able to see one of the other significant targets that was hit overnight by the Ukrainian armed forces and their drone attacks within the the region. We've really been on a whining and dining tour at this point of all of Western Russia, from the beautiful city of Taganrog, which actually isn't that beautiful. I can show it to y'all. Let me go get y'all a norm. Yeah, there we go. That's what Taganrog actually looks like. It's not really that pretty of a city. Honestly, most of it looks like it's falling apart and crumbling away. Much like some people like to say, you know, the Russians are always crumbling and falling apart. But we all know that Russia truly is a first world country in spirit. But also, we've been able to see the town of Bertolanovka, which is once again another pinnacle of civilization and society. You can see that they have a shilka in the middle of the city square. We always know that that means that the property values are low. We also have been able to see, oh look, there it is again. Dude, that's not even the same shilka. That's actually a different one. They got a lot
Honestly,
of these.
that thing's a little bit rusty. I'm just saying, those treads on that thing look like they're just flaking off rust at this point.
Dude, that thing's a little busted. Also, this T-72 is pretty busted. I'm not even lying, dude. It looks like they stripped this of every single thing that could be stripped before they put it out here in the square. Like, that's actually kind of sad. But beyond that, I'm trying to see if I can find y'all something of Bertolanovka. So they have one store that looks somewhat alright on the front, but then you can see that that's just a facade, as they call it, to cover up the crappy back of the building that actually is what the building normally or naturally looked like. We can also see this bank here covered in aluminum sheeting down near the bottom, or that might be some sort of a store, not entirely sure. But once again, Bertolanovka is a pinnacle of Western, or really world civilization, as many people do know. But it is now time for us to move on up into the city of Lipetsk, because Lipetsk is truly the epitome of the civilized world. We've been able to see so many things in Lipetsk that would blow the mind. For example, this one small basilica, which really is a sight to behold. We can also see this other, slightly larger basilica, almost like a tower. Once again, truly a place to behold. We can also see this rundown building in what appears to be the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Once again, a pinnacle of society and an achievement of the Soviet Union and the Russian people. And finally, last but not
one thing they always get right in these places, they may look like trash and they may look like they're not being maintained at all, but they do have the statues, though. Like, that's the one thing they keep up well, is the little Soviet statues that they used to have, which is crazy.
Dude, the war memorials are the only thing that is maintained in every single city. Like, look at this. Like, that's not a war memorial. It practically is getting overgrown with weeds everywhere but the little gravel path that they lay down to it. If you find a war memorial, though, to World War II, they will have that thing absolutely decked out to the nines. But once again, Lipetsk, as we all know, the summary of this story is that it is a pinnacle of civilization. But more importantly, it's not just a pinnacle of civilization, it's a pinnacle of steel manufacturing for the Russian Federation. Because just on the other banks of the Voronezh River, funnily enough named after the city of Voronezh, which is a little bit further south of Lipetsk, but nevertheless I digress, is a massive metallurgical plant that pretty much exists and encompasses the entire southern side of the city. As you know, metallurgical plants are somewhat important to wartime production and strategic interests. Steel production actually is something that, while it is slept on massively, at least in terms of the modern day industrial base, it is still as important now as it ever really has been to a nation's ability to survive or largely produce wartime materials if they were completely cut off from external global supply lines. This metallurgical plant in particular is actually fairly massive, and I'll try and see if I can show you all this a little bit. Actually you can't. It looks like hell here though, but let me see if I can try and get y'all a little bit of what's up here. Maybe maybe this bridge will give us a good view. There we go. There's the metallurgical plant in the distance. It looks beautiful, clean, truly first world. Everyone knows that Russia is a first world country without a shadow of a doubt. And also, look at all that coal. Like, that is a lot of coal. But beyond that, this metallurgical plant is somewhat significant in the Russian Federation, and we were able to hear that overnight the metallurgical plant was hit. And we were able to see the clips right here.
Не, ну я понимаю, что типа заводы сливаются, понятно. О, другое дело, да? А камера еще хуёвее.
Oh, wow. It looks like the foundry has moved outside.
It looks like they're starting to do what we call open air Bessemer process. It's a very interesting kind of a thing.
В общем, как обычно они там, сливают металл, я знаю, блядь. Вдруг.
What are the odds that the Ivan filming this right here is probably an employee of the plant? He's thinking, damn, they want my job.
The chances are high. Like, probably everyone in the city works in that plant. Also, man, I like when he first looked at it, he almost did like a Peter Griffin laugh. Like, listen to it.
Типа заводы сливаются, понятно. О, другое дело, да? А камера еще хуевее.
Yeah, that's it.
В общем,
The boss isn't gonna like this one.
Man, my company blessings, they're going to freaking fire me the next
а
day.
камера еще
But we can
хуевее.
see once again the clip in a smaller form right here. But once again, that fire was geolocated to be inside the metallurgical plant down here. Now, metallurgical plants, unlike other factories, actually can survive a little bit of abuse. Generally, metallurgical plants are already designed to survive incredibly high searing temperatures of molten steel, or not really molten steel, but near molten steel, if it was somehow able to escape one of the processes that the steel was going through. So this factory may not be significantly damaged, although one thing I would say, this would be an ecological disaster, and I'm obviously not recommending that the Ukrainians would ever do such a thing, but this might be something that would turn out to be much more beneficial to the Ukrainians if we find this out here in a little bit. But if they hit the giant coal piles over here with the drone, and they somehow caught the coal on fire, that could actually become a serious issue. Coal fires are pretty tough to deal with, especially when they're underground. But even above ground, if a coal fire begins in a coal pile like that, it is pretty tough to put it out. And the coal fire could continue on for quite some time. And that could start to see that a lot of the coal or coke that is used in the steel plant to produce steel could be disappearing into quite literally the air as the coal would burn. And not only that, it would make sure to really set back production quotas and abilities of this steel plant most likely into the future, and also cause a decent amount of monetary damage to the steel plant and its owners. But beyond that, it does appear that this plant was hit, and we'll be waiting to see what exactly is happening with the damage, and if this plant's been taken entirely offline for some while, or if it was only slightly damaged and production still continues. But moving on out of Lipetsk, it's now time for us to get on into the crown jewel, just a little bit north. It is the city of Ryazan, which we have been to 9 million times at this point in the war. Everyone knows Ryazan because Ryazan has been hit by every single Ukrainian drone that has ever been launched into the Russian Federation at this point. Ryazan is a drone magnet. Without a doubt, there is just no way to avoid that. They have been hit in the oil refinery. They have been hit in the thermal power plant. They have been hit even in other facilities around the city, including this airfield a little bit further on north up here. We've even seen that some drones have attacked and hit that airfield a long time ago in the past. And once again last night, a Ukrainian drone did end up hitting the oil refinery again, knocking it out again. This is the most unlucky oil refinery in the entirety of Russia. This thing gets hit literally every 2 weeks. So here's the clip again.
A very windy day.
And there's the hit.
Look at that. This place is going to be nothing but patchwork before it's all over with. By the time they get done patching the same pieces of equipment every single time, it's just going to be like looking like a junkyard.
Oh, dang, that sounded like a solid hit. Dude, what was that at
and
the end?
The dogs showed up too. Did you hear that? They were sounding off.
Dude, like 9 million dogs started barking down there on the street. Like it was like a whole mob of them just started going off with the car alarms, dude. But beyond that, the Ryazan oil refinery was hit again, and oil refineries are a lot more fragile than steel mills, like the one we saw back down in the city of. For some reason I'm completely forgetting the name, the city of Lipetsk. So for this reason, the hit in Ryazan once again maybe putting that oil refinery offline for weeks again and making sure that it's not operational. I do not know why the Ukrainians have such an obsession with hitting oil refineries, and specifically this one. Well, we know why they have an obsession with hitting oil refineries, but we really don't know why they have an obsession with hitting this one. I'm not entirely sure about that, but we're still happy to see it, and it's good to know that this oil refinery will be remaining offline well on into the future. But loads of people have been talking about something that really doesn't have to do with Ukraine attacking Russia or Russia attacking Ukraine. It has to do with something entirely different. Something that was brought up today by the Germans, interestingly enough, and it appears to be a fairly clear and somewhat credible threat, at least according to them, and is really working off of the framework of the Polish statements that were made yesterday about how they were going to pretty much begin mobilization efforts, considering that they believe that a war is going to be coming around soon. The Germans have practically repeated the same thing again. We have been able to here today from Germany that the head of the German intelligence service, BND, Bruno Kohl, stated that Russia wants to test the unity of the West and check the functioning of NATO's Article 5, which considers an attack on one ally as an attack on all. According to him, Moscow may accelerate this process depending on the course of the war in Ukraine, and if the conflict ends before 2029 or 2030, Russia could more quickly direct its resources against Europe. We hope this does not happen, but we must be prepared, according to Kohl. It does appear that the Germans, on every single level of the government, have moved into the stage of getting to where Poland's at, which is pretty much mobilizing the population for a possible war with the Russians in the future. And it appears that according to some sort of information that everyone in Europe, or intelligence everyone's getting in the background in Europe, this is becoming a widespread theme or an idea amongst all national governments that make up NATO and the European Union, except for the United States of America at this point. It seems that everyone is on the same page that at some point war is coming to them. And while the war may be in Ukraine right now, the Russian Federation is going to be adamant on starting a conflict with NATO before the next few years. Before really there's even enough time for the dust to settle from the Ukraine war, it appears that everyone believes that the Russian Federation will be beginning a war with NATO. That, of course, doesn't really make a lot of sense from a strategic or planning standpoint on the Russian side of things, but once again, we discussed this time and time again as to why that does not really matter, because Russia always has their nuclear arsenal to lean on to in this kind of a situation. If the Russians start a conflict and begin an invasion of a NATO country, even if they are turned around or stopped immediately and they start getting pushed back, the Russians can then simply threaten that it's an existential threat to the state and begin to deploy tactical nuclear weapons onto the battlefield, meaning that the Russian army or the Russian ground forces, or really Russian armed forces, don't even really have to be that competent or capable on a large part. They just have to simply be capable enough to start a war, and then the nuclear weapons will largely ensure that the Russian Federation never gets steamrolled, and it would force people into the negotiating table or into Armageddon, either way. And most people would rather pick the negotiating table than Armageddon, and that's what the Russians would be counting on. So it does appear that, according to everyone in Europe, this is an inevitable fact of life, and that this will be happening at some point years on into the future, or maybe just a couple of years from now, if the Ukraine war is to end soon. And a lot of people are talking about this right now, or really the statements that were made by Bruno Kohl today, and what this would look like after the US-EU fallout. And some people are saying that Russia might fire a missile into NATO, maybe a direct attack onto NATO, to really try and test and gauge their reactions. Some people are saying that Russia will begin more hybrid warfare. Many people do know that there's been a large amount of sabotage attempts and assassination attempts that have been made by the Russian FSB inside of Europe. Some of them have been successful and some of them have been unsuccessful, but that may continue on into the future, so that way the Russians have some sort of plausible deniability that it isn't really them, although everyone does know that it is in fact them. Others have been saying that it might be a limited ground operation of some kind, and others are unsure and undecided on this point. But it does seem as though right now everyone is split almost clean down the middle. Some people are believing that the Russians might fire a missile directly into NATO, and others are believing that they may just continue some form of a hybrid war, where they're really conducting covert operations more than overt direct acts in armed force against NATO. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like 40% of the audience said Russia might fire a missile into NATO to test the Article 5 response, while 39% said Russia will probably begin more hybrid warfare tactics, and 8% said it might be a limited ground operation into a NATO country. And one thing I think I can rule out right off the bat is I don't think Russia is going to do any type of ground operation into NATO countries. If Russia did that, that would be way beyond testing capabilities. That would be basically declaring war on NATO at that point. And I don't think Russia's ready to go to that extent just yet. They'll probably get there eventually, but they're really not there just yet. So most likely what we're going to see is probably Russia accidentally firing a missile into a NATO country. And this time, instead of it falling very close to a border, it's probably going to go a little bit further into NATO territory to effectively test what the resolve is going to be of the NATO Article 5 response. And right now, of course, the U.S. and EU are having a bit of a fallout with that. And even though the U.S. is not formally withdrawing from NATO, it sounds like they're taking a step back from it And now they're starting to basically tell Europe, you're on your own, and we might not even defend you if Article 5 is invoked. And I think Russia is going to be very interested to test that theory and see exactly where the U.S. actually stands on it. But of course, they'll have some plausible deniability built in there. They'll be probably saying in the public, Russia will, that it was either an accident, it was a targeting error, or something like that. But we'll all know what the truth is. It'll most likely be a testing of responses to see where the U.S. currently stands. So I'm with the 40%, but Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 40% as well. I believe if the Russian Federation was to do anything, it would be more akin to a direct, overt military act than one of a hybrid war. With everyone saying that they have to mobilize and be prepared for the Russian Federation's war effort against Europe into the future, that is largely letting us understand that this means that they're expecting that the Russian Federation would conduct some form of armed action, not some form of a covert sabotage like they have already been conducting over the course of the war inside of Europe. Another thing that I do want to point out, though, because this is something that some people have been saying in the chat, and something that I thought we might as well try and disprove, because, you know, people believe whatever they want. It doesn't really matter if there's any intelligence or facts behind it, but I think that we ought to do our due diligence here to at least try and prove that these claims are not true. NATO alone, without the United States, is still far more powerful than the Russian Federation in practically every single way. So really quickly, let me show y'all this, because on Reddit today, while I was looking around to compile this news, there was actually a United 24 infographic that came out showing the differences in between the European Union, or largely the European contingent of NATO, versus Russia, and then adding Ukraine on top of it. So right now, man for man, the one thing that is a little bit interesting here, the Russians are on the low end of 1.5 million. The European Union, just speaking about Europe alone, is on the higher end of 1.5 million. So there's already a 100,000 man disparity in between the Russian army, which at this point is the largest it's been in decades, and the European Union's armed forces, which, crazily enough, for the large part, across the board, most countries have shrunken down their armed forces to be some of the smallest that have ever been seen in their history. For example, the British Army right now is as small as it was back in the 1740s, which is the smallest it has been for hundreds of years. And then they add Ukraine on top of that, which is about a whole other million. But beyond that, you can kind of get the idea that Europe already would have a pretty good fighting chance, at least at the outbreak of a conflict, to actually hold their own just in terms of manpower. And then when they move on into the next category, crazily enough, Europe actually does have more operational main battle tanks than the Russians. And this number right here, 4,000 tanks, is largely the number that is assumed to be operational, but we actually understand that this number is most likely in practicality around 1,500 to 2,000, meaning that Europe has twice the amount of main battle tanks, of course, all of them higher quality than the Russian Federation's, at the outset of any kind of a conventional war. Once again, this is not including the United States of America or Canada. This is just the European Union alone. And then they add Ukraine on top of it, and then they act like Ukraine's really adding a lot. Like, I'm gonna be honest, like, this infographic was a little bit weird, because they're like, Ukraine's adding a lot. It's like, no, they already beat them by, like, you know, a good 1,000 MBTs, you know, before this even was done. You know, it's like, so it's not really like it's adding that much. Also, by the way, man, I just noticed that Ukraine adding on their tanks, they only added on 100. Did you see that?
Yeah, how's it only 100? Like, how does that make sense?
I don't really know. But moving on from that one, obviously, another thing that the Europeans would dominate in is the skies. The Russians do have 800 combat aircraft. Once again, these are the pre-war numbers, so I want to put that out there, that the Russians have lost, I believe it's somewhere around 200 aircraft in the Ukraine war so far, meaning that this number is most likely around 650, including replenishments that have been conducted. So the European Union, as a whole, is beating out Russia in the skies almost 3-1 at this point in most engagements that would be seen, meaning that Europe would be able to achieve air supremacy within the opening days of the conflict and would be able to maintain that all the way through. Not only that, but Europe has a large amount of anti-radiation missiles and also aircraft that are anti-radiation or seed mission capable, meaning that they would also be able to largely keep Russian air defense at bay during their air operations. So once again,
also, Enforcer, by the way, we are talking about a potential conflict between Russia and Europe as a whole, right? That's what we're discussing?
For the large part, yeah.
So would it really be a level playing field like we're talking about right here with just Europe going up against Russia? Because once again, Europe's largely an alliance right now. So Russia, I don't think they would be going up against Europe just by themselves. I think they wouldn't have their cronies by their sides. At least that's my speculation. They would probably have definitely North Korea by their side for whatever that's worth. They would also probably have Iran by their sides in some way or another. And the wild card is China, where they're going to stand on the issue. And of course, they might have some smaller allies here and there, but between like the other ones getting involved, I wonder if it'd actually be a level playing field, like between just Europe and Russia. Would it really stay that way, or would it expand pretty quick?
It would, because it would be a level playing field. I think the Europeans actually would have the advantage, because in terms of what really matters in a war, it's about superior firepower, and superior firepower is largely seen these days through air superiority. The North Koreans have no aircraft. The Iranians have no aircraft of any kind of competent abilities. Most of those are from the 1950s or the 60s, and for the Iranians, their most modern aircraft that really could be used are from the 70s. So for the large part, there really isn't anything that any of those countries could add beyond bringing in some additional personnel or trying to give the Russians shells for their artillery. And from what we know, North Korean ammunition, which is the only ammunition that would be provided to Russia in large numbers like it already is right now, is very low in quality, and there's a decent dud rate with those kinds of rounds. So there wouldn't really be a lot that could be provided that was actually of value, unless you're counting manpower as value. But manpower doesn't really mean much of anything if those soldiers aren't well equipped or well supported by really firepower systems or just overall superior firepower doctrine. A large number of infantry really doesn't mean anything. But moving on from that, we can also see, once again, in the other category, the European Union dominates the Russian Federation in terms of armored personnel carriers. That's just a given. In terms of artillery, the Russians do beat the Ukrainians, the European Union out. Also, did they just show armored personnel carriers twice? Oh, they're showing infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers as separate categories. Still, by the way, there's like a marginal difference in between the two. They really fill almost the exact same role. It's just that infantry fighting vehicles are technically a little bit more equipped and armored and have a little bit more firepower, but there really isn't a major difference in them, to be entirely honest. But still, the European Union beats them out. And then finally, in the last number, trained reservists, of course, the European Union beats them out again. So time and time again, it's fairly easy to see just in raw numbers, and we could do the number crunching on our own and probably come out to the same conclusion, but I just wanted one that was quick to reference and pull up. The European Union is not as weak as people want to make it out to be. Yes, on a nation-to-nation basis, there are somewhat smaller armed forces out there. For example, the British Army, well, hang on here, let me get that back full screen. Let me go to the British Army here to show you all the actual size of it currently. The British Army is fairly small at the moment, and let me see if I can get you all the active number of service members. There are 73,874 regular forces personnel at this moment, along with 4,172 Gurkhas. And then there's about 26,000 volunteer reserve personnel. But beyond that, in terms of regular soldiers, there's only about 77,000 of them, including the Gurkhas. So when you put that into perspective, the British Army isn't that big, and obviously Britain wouldn't be able to fight the Russian Federation alone with those kinds of numbers, because they just don't really have enough ground troops to be able to fight over a multi-hundred-mile long front line without doing some rapid mobilization. The thing is, though, is that looking at it in that perspective is a little bit goofy. It's kind of like saying, to the Amish, that Amish guy can't move that barn. Well, of course, the one Amish guy isn't picking up the whole barn and moving it a couple of miles down the road. It's going to be the entire village that comes out there with him, picks up the barn, and moves it down the road. So always acting like everyone's going to go one-on-one against Russia like it's a movie, like your little henchmen go up and get their asses kicked one at a time before the big guy comes in and then goes, "Oh, I see you beat all my henchmen." That's not how real life works. In real life, there's such a thing as called getting ganked. And what Europe would do is that they'd all get together and they go gank the Russians all at one time. So probably not really the best of moves for the Russian Federation to even provoke the Europeans, because the Europeans teaming up together as a group are more powerful than the Russian Federation would ever be, and not only that, they actually have a comparable amount of nuclear weapons as well in terms of tactical and strategic varieties that could be employed against Russian Federation forces on the battlefield or in a last-ditch attempt against the Russian Federation strategically, practically wiping out most population centers and industrial abilities. So with that in mind, I would have to say that while it is a little bit concerned, well, while some people want to be concerned about a possible ground conflict starting or wanting to say that the Europeans are weak or NATO is weak, the reality is that even in just raw numbers, not even speaking qualitatively, Europe is doing far better than Russia. And speaking on the qualitative level, Europe is clearly doing far better than Russia. Everyone in Europe has a contract army. There are very little to no conscript armies that exist anymore anywhere in Europe. And if they do exist, those conscripts are still largely trained or mobilized to the level of a contract soldier, meaning that the Russians on the qualitative and numbers end are losing on all measures against the Europeans. There's no way that they could really try and make that work against Europe alone, even if the United States wasn't there to help them out. Because one thing I have to say is that I'm a very proud American, and of course a patriot of the United States of America, and love the United States. But the United States isn't the be-all, end-all in the world. It's the largest and most powerful country on the face of the planet alone right now. But there are a lot of other larger and as powerful groups out there, just like the European Union or other groups for that example. Really, to be entirely honest with you, the only groups that really do count in the modern world for being the largest and most powerful is the European Union and the United States. China's on up there, but really, honestly, it doesn't even come close to the European Union. They're about $6 trillion short in collective GDP, even compared to the European Union, which really makes China seem to not really even be that big of a player. If anything, if we want to team up with anyone, it always should be the Europeans, because the United States and Europe teamed up together alone, completely forgetting everything in the Western Pacific that is also aligned with the United States and our allies, makes the most powerful military and economic alliance that's ever been seen on the planet. I'm not even kidding about that. There's no economic or military alliance in the history of the world that's been able to leverage that much firepower and possess that much wealth at a single time in history, rather than the arrangement that we currently have in between Europe and the United States. So a pretty interesting thing with that. But once again, putting that out there for a lot of people who keep on hearing that the Europeans are just toast. They're not. And that largely is just a whole bunch of people fear-mongering and acting like it's all over. And I also that's just raw propaganda, to be entirely honest with most of y'all, because anyone who says that is just like drinking the Kool-Aid that the Chinese and the Russians put out, because the Chinese and Russians want you to think that there isn't a chance and then you might as well just give up now, because they know in reality, if they actually, if there was a lot of confidence in the West that we actually could beat them on the battlefield, we would beat them on the battlefield, because we wouldn't be afraid of averting a war, and then we would really see how big the Russians are as a joke. And on top of that, another thing is, I just got to point this out, because I think a lot of people also don't get this in terms of power scaling. Ukraine as a military isn't that good of a military, even right now. Like, I don't mean that by any disrespect. The Ukrainians have incredibly high morale, they fight heroically, but in terms of equipment and in terms of doctrine and strategy, they are not that great. Like, as far as like actually assessing them compared to what the standard is in the West, they are about halfway there. Of course, way better off than the Russians on a qualitative level, but on any other kind of level, they're not even close to being on the fighting level or competency of Poland, Germany, the UK, or France, or the United States for that matter. So when you think about that, if the Russians are having a hard time fighting Ukraine, which is about halfway to the competency of a European fighting military, how good would the Russians do against dozens of militaries that are up to a European fighting level, with technology and equipment across the board that's the most advanced that it can get, and also soldiers that are trained to the highest standards that could ever be trained? There's just no way to be able to pull that off. And on top of that, they won't even have air superiority, and they won't even be able to leverage their air defense, because all of these countries have aircraft that can target and destroy air defense systems. There's just no way for them to stand a chance. So, I think that's a better way of looking at it, because that's the actual realistic scenario, instead of everyone acting like everything in the West is always cooked and it's so Jover. It's never Jover. It's just what they want you to believe. But beyond that, a lot of people have also been talking about the United States doing another big move today that we were also able to hear, that the United States will be stopping all military joint exercises in the future. There are some that have already been pre-planned and scheduled for this year, and the United States will be present, attending, and involved in those exercises, but beyond that, we will not be participating or being involved in any other joint European military exercises. And we have also heard once again, which I got to tell y'all that it's all across the board these days, so we just got to kind of take it each day as it comes. But we've been able to hear that once again, the idea of withdrawing all U.S. troops from Europe has been brought up once more. And a lot of people are putting in their thoughts right now. And it appears that a lot of people are saying that Europe will now stand on its own, and the separation of the sphere is going to happen either way it goes. Some others are saying that the USA will come back around and remain in Europe, which is a smaller group of people. Some people are saying that it seems very unstable and it's not that good, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So, after we've heard that the United States is apparently not participating in the planning of any further EU joint military exercises over Europe, and also they're still talking about withdrawing troops from Europe as well, sort of leaving Europe high and dry when it comes to U.S. help, what are your thoughts? 56% said Europe will now stand on its own as a result of these U.S. actions, while 24% said the USA will come back around soon, and 17% said, honestly, it seems very unstable and not good. Not sure which way it's going to go. And I will say this. Certainly not a good thing. I don't know why we're resorting to this level of pettiness. We should be, once again, still helping our European allies train for the worst case scenario because we have been friends with Europe for a long time. And it seems like the right thing to do is not to leave them high and dry at a time of need, which is right now when Russia might be about to attack Europe in some way or another. So I'm confident Europe will stand on its own. They do have a long way to go before they rearm properly. But I believe they're capable of standing on their own 2 feet. Of course, we would be much stronger if we stood with Europe, and that would be a much better situation. But sadly, I think for right now, it's not going to be that way. And in fact, we actually saw today on flight radar, it looked like one of the ballistic missile surveillance aircraft of the U.S. Air Force actually flew all the way around Europe to get to the United Kingdom, avoiding European airspace completely to make some sort of signal to Europe that they're not going to be helping them with intelligence right now. So just a whole new level of pettiness going on right now. Maybe the U.S. will come back around. This could be another bluff, but I'm really not even sure what the U.S. wants from Europe at this point in order to make the situation right. I've heard suggestions of a 5% GDP defense spending guideline, but once again, I don't even think the U.S. is meeting that right now.
No.
So if we're not meeting it, then Europe's not meeting it. Why are we demanding they do something that we're not even doing? So I'm not sure if there's a solution for Europe to do to make this right with the United States. It could just be, for now, just sort of what it is. But Enforcer, what say you?
Interestingly enough, to tell you about that, the United States only spends 3.7% of its GDP on the military. And something that I find a little bit weird with all that, like these things don't even add up. Europe has to pay its fair share, so everyone in Europe has to spend 5% on military GDP to satisfy the United States. We're currently spending 3.7%, so we don't even meet that standard right now on our own. So you would think that naturally we would say, well, let's be the leader, and let's already start upping our military spending to reach a 5% of GDP spending percentage. But no, actually at the same time, the President of the United States is stating that he wants the military budget cut in half over the next 5 years, meaning that we're doing the very thing, well, he's planning on doing the very thing here over the next 5 years that he's saying has led Europe to being weak and defenseless and completely incapable of helping itself. So I don't really know what the objective of that is, rather than just, saying whatever comes to mind, which you're not supposed to do when you're the President of the United States. But it's a little bit goofy to me, because one thing I think, and I actually do have to say, there is a point with this. I think it is a good thing for European nations to massively ramp up their military spending and get their military readiness up to a far higher standard, because it would be better to see the entire alliance as strong as it possibly can be, instead of seeing that some countries want to try and cut corners on military spending to spend more on civic or social matters, and then possibly divert their own defenses, and then they have to try and figure that out once a conflict starts. I personally have to say that it's not a bad idea, but the way that this is being executed is completely asinine. And then while we are saying that about Europe, then the United States is going to have a plan of not only denuclearizing, but then also cutting our military budget in half over the next 5 years. So while Europe is ramping up their spending, we're going to be shutting down our spending. It makes no sense at all. Because it's like,
Also, by the way, if the United States' objective is to get Europe to ramp up its defense spending, then they could have simply given them time to do that. Because right now, what they've done is they preemptively gone and punished Europe by once again telling them that they're not going to participate in trying to defend their territory by participating in military exercises. So they've punished them before they even had the chance to raise their defense spending inside of Europe. And also, now they're announcing they're planning to rearm, and we're still going through plans to punish Europe. So it's like they're starting to move toward like meeting these requirements that the U.S. wants them to meet. And honestly, like you said, Enforcer, they're good requirements. Like Europe should be prepared as well, because we have to be strong as a whole alliance to make NATO work properly. So Europe's doing what they need to do now, generally speaking. $800 billion plan to rearm, that's a big deal. But the U.S. is still acting like they're not on par with the strategy, which, it's just out of touch with what's really happening. And it's also just showing that the strategy is ass backwards. It should have been a punishment after Europe didn't comply, not beforehand.
Yeah, it's just not making any sense at all. And I would have to say that the planning and execution of this has been absolutely horrendous. And not only that, you don't even have to threaten the Europeans to do anything along these lines. Really, the only thing we had to do, like just being entirely honest, because, this would involve a little bit of lying, but this would have been a much better solution, is to say that the United States militarily would be so far stretched in a conflict like that, we wouldn't be able to help out the Europeans entirely, so they need to ramp up their military spending to be ready to defend themselves, because we might not be able to do it all the heavy lifting on our own. Although, really, in reality, that's not even the case. That wouldn't even be the scenario, because Europe, once again, does have a large amount of personnel and armed forces across the entirety of the continent, across all of these various countries that make up the European Union and, of course, NATO. So that doesn't even really work. But if we wanted to try and push an idea like that and largely move them into increasing their military spending, we could have just said something like that and completely avoided the whole thing with the tariffs or threatening them or withdrawing from NATO or anything like that doesn't really make any sense and isn't really beneficial to the sphere of influence and is really more so damaging to it than anything. That's generally how I would have gone about it if I was having the same idea or plan. Once again, I do have to say that I am generally behind the idea that European countries should increase their military spending. But at the same time, this was a terrible way to go about it. And instead of threatening people, we should have just encouraged folks to try and increase their military spending. I think that would have gone a lot better. And I think at this point, European nations would clearly understand, like they have been, the imminent threat that the Russian Federation is posing at this point. So I hope...
I do agree with you. I don't think that jumping the gun and trying to punish them before they even had a chance to change, because I saw some people saying, well, wait a minute, didn't he make these same demands toward Europe 5 years ago before he left office last time? He did do that, but then a new administration took office and they really weren't really focused on making Europe rearm, which that was something that he probably should have been focused on, because it is something important to do. But there's a right way to go about it. Like, of course, honestly, I'll tell you this: most of the things being said by the U.S. government are actually true. It's just the way that it's being implemented is really weird. It really doesn't make any logical sense. But the end goal is logical. It's just the way he's trying to get there is going to cause hell in the process. So it's like if he would sit down and come up with a plan that made a little bit more logical flow of sense, it would go a lot smoother and we'd get there a lot quicker. And also with all the turmoil excluded from the whole plan. But Europe, I think they would have come to the realization that if they were getting some really strong words from the current president, then they would have changed, because they knew what was coming down the pipeline. It was going to be the same punishment that's happening right now, but at least they would have had like maybe a few months to a year to get up to speed with doing what they need to do. So honestly, that's what should have happened, but that didn't happen.
Yeah, I would have to say so. And I see a whole bunch of interesting comments being made in the chat. And I want to address a couple of them because they are interesting. Someone said, let's see. Also, here's a couple of things that I do have to say. Getting them to increase their military spending is a good thing, but I don't think some people realize this. We have no right to force another country to increase spending of any type anyway, because I don't know if any of y'all recognize this, but in the last election, the election before that, there was this huge comeuppance about foreigners coming over to the United States and telling the United States what they should be doing and what they will be doing. A lot of people get really pissed off about that, and rightfully so, because who the hell are these foreigners to come to the United States and tell us what we're doing in our own country is wrong and to change it? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So why in the world does the United States have a right to go over to a country and tell them that they have to increase their military spending, even if it seems like it would be the right thing to do? Because something that a lot of people don't think about is that the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, and every other country in Europe has a democratically elected government just like the United States. And some of those countries may have the exact same kind of political ideas that some people in here may not recognize. Like, for example, we've been the world police for too long, and we're not focusing on taking care of the veterans and the homeless, and we need to take care of the veterans and the homeless, and the only way to do that is cut down on spending because we're overdrafting and we're going into debt massively. So we need to cut down on everything, cut down on welfare, cut down on veteran affairs, cut down on everything. We have to save money. And then they do that, and then we want to act like that's wrong for them to do, and that they have to ramp up their military spending, while at the same time, that's the prevailing mindset inside the United States. I don't know if some people are seeing this, but that's kind of hypocritical. Also, on top of that, I don't really think the United States actually does have a right. We have a right to ask them and say that we're wildly concerned, but we don't have a right to start trying to force countries to do something that isn't even mandatory in the first place. The 2% GDP spending quota is a recommendation or a guideline. It is not an actual binding rule of NATO that is enforceable. That's something that a lot of people need to get through their heads. Second thing is, I saw someone say that the United States has been asking for all of them to up their military spending for 50 years. That is wildly untrue. I mean, you must be ignorant of history, because for the past 50 years ago, the Soviet Union existed. It was the 1970s, and everyone thought that they were going to freaking die. And that's why Britain had an insanely large military, and that's why France had an insanely large military. You can just see that, like, for example, in the Gulf War, which happened 1 year after it happened literally just a couple of months after the Soviet Union collapsed, and you can see how many soldiers were involved on the British side alone. It was an insanely large amount, and let me see if I can get the breakdown here by country. So let's see here. I think that they should have this on the Wikipedia page, because the amount of British soldiers involved was in the hundreds of thousands. So let me go see. Gulf War forces, British forces. Let me go see if I can get the number here. So 53,462 British soldiers were involved in the conflict. On the coalition side, to put this out there, the coalition was made up of around 950,000 soldiers, and a decent amount of those actually were provided by Saudi Arabia in the hundreds of thousands, and then there was a couple of tens of thousands that were also provided by the French, and then there was hundreds of thousands provided by the United States. But the British were there in significant numbers, and during that time in history, the British Army was about 300,000 strong, which is equivalent to about the size of the Polish Army currently in the modern day, the entire Polish armed forces, but that was just the British Army. So it's a little bit nonsensical to come up with just flat out lies or just kid yourself into thinking that for some reason in the middle of the Cold War, when we legitimately thought that the Soviet Union might steamroll Europe, that everyone in Europe that was in NATO, which only made up half of Europe at the time, by the way, because most of NATO wasn't even in NATO yet, they were being subjugated and pretty much put into forced puppetry by the Soviet Union. Everyone was spending out the kazoozle back then for defense because there was a actual legitimate enemy on the continent. After that, a lot of people started to cut back on military spending because there was no clear threat or an enemy that NATO was having to deal with up until recently. So it doesn't, like, lying about the situation doesn't really do a lot to further the argument that Europe isn't spending a lot. It really just makes you look like a fool when you start to say things that historically are not even true. Because if you were to say, for the past, let's see, 15 years, the United States has been asking for the Europeans to up their military spending. That might be a more correct sort of a statement, but the United States wasn't asking a damn of anyone from 1991 up until about 2014 when the Donbass was invaded by the Russians and Crimea was annexed. There was not a murmur or a mention of increasing military spending for any country in NATO, because as far as we were concerned, the Russians were not friendly, but they were largely benevolent, and they didn't really appear to be that open of a threat anymore. So all of this military spending was not even justifiable if it was even happening at that point, because there was no clear enemy for the NATO to even fight at that point for the large part. So that's something to put out there for consideration. But saying the past 50 years, I hate to say it, but I got to be honest with folks these days. If you say something like that, you clearly know nothing about what you're talking about. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, or at least my ideas behind it. But still, a lot of people are wondering, would you support NATO making the 5% GDP spending guideline into a requirement for NATO membership, practically paying dues? Although it's not really paying dues, you're really paying it into your own military. But it seems as though this is a very interesting question. Almost an even split, but there is a slight majority that's winning out right now. So Matthew, what do we got on this one?
All right. So shockingly, this is actually a pretty contentious poll, actually. Once again, would you support the 5% GDP spending guideline being turned into a requirement for NATO members? 48% said yes, make it a hard requirement, and also 43% said no, keep it a flexible guideline. And honestly, for me, I'm going to say I'm in favor of making it a hard requirement, because it would only make sense that NATO as a whole can only be strong if each country is properly spending on its defense. And considering the modern day threats from Russia and this new axis of evil which is popping up, I don't think it's too bad of a thing to require them to spend 5% of their overall GDP on defense. Once again, that leaves 95% of the GDP for these countries dedicated to whatever they want, but only 5% has to be spent on defense. I would say that should be a hard requirement. And since the United States is the de facto leader of NATO, then we should be the first to make that change. We should not be cutting our military budget, and we should, in fact, be meeting this 5% guideline if we're going to be imposing that on other people. So I'm with the 49%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would actually have to say that I'm with the 41% at this point. Now it's actually a shrinking margin, that it should be a flexible guideline, because I'm also seeing some things that I'm finding kind of a little goofy in the chat. I actually saw someone say this, and I just want to address things like this really quickly. Someone said the United States should withdraw from Europe because European countries don't allow their citizens the right to bear arms. Now, I'm not going to get into the domestic political things here in the United States about that, but I will say that I'm an owner of a large amount of firearms. But the thing that I don't think some people are getting is that it's not the United States citizenry's prerogative to start telling other countries what kind of laws they're supposed to have and not have. I don't think some of y'all are really thinking about this, but Germany has its own people living in it that vote for their own government, and if all of those people in Germany vote in representatives that decide that the German citizenry are not allowed to own firearms unless if it's in a very rare situation or a circumstance, that is Germany's democratic right to do. That's a very stupid kind of an idea that your domestic political ideas are now going to be thrust onto other countries around the world. Because the honest truth is that you're not a citizen of Germany, and they're not a citizen of the United States. So German opinions do not matter in United States domestic affairs. Neither do American opinions on German matters. And you shouldn't be trying to make foreign policy decisions off of such a stupid mindset like that. Like I'm someone who owns a lot of guns, and that's just stupid from the outset. I've never heard anything like that, to be entirely honest, ever. And also on top of that, domestic political affairs in another country are none of America's business at all. Like, I don't think people know that. It's not their business what's going on domestically inside the United States. It's not our business what's going on over there. As far as we are concerned about economic and strategic interests when we deal with foreign policy. If you want to start talking about stupid things like domestic politics and somehow push that into foreign policy, you're probably the reason why foreign policy is going to be falling apart in a couple of years if that's the prevailing mindset. Because if a democratic disconnected right there, and it looks like there we go, and we're back. There we go. Yeah, reconnection was okay. So if you are saying that, what you're saying is that you really want to strip yourself of all of your rights inside the United States because China and Russia should be able to tell us how to run everything that we're doing in America the way they want it to, and it doesn't matter who you voted for in the United States or what you're thinking about. And honestly, you know, something else is a little bit interesting. I got to say this because I know people who are saying this and what they think. Largely, they've come up with this enemy at this point that's called the globalists, and they say that the globalists are trying to run the world the exact way they want it, and it doesn't matter who you're voting for or who's representing you in the government because there's these secret little shadowy people behind the scenes pulling all the strings. That's exactly what you're turning into right then and there if you sit there and start saying, I don't like what Germany's doing inside their own country. We're going to change that whether the people like it or not. You're pretty much becoming the globalists to the Germans at that point because you're literally telling them how to run their own country where they voted for representatives that wanted that or not. That's
what's funny? You know what's funny is the U.S. Some U.S. officials will say, maybe this is the fault of the globalist. The way I see it is the United States is the globalist. Like we are. We're the world police. We're the ones that run around and exact influence on other people. Like, look at the influence we have over Europe. Because we supply so many weapons to them, we trade with them, and things like that. While they can stand on their own 2 feet, we still exact a lot of influence over them, and that's why they're currently still trying to deal with the United States, even though we're being very nasty toward Europe right now, because we do have that influence. Also, even our adversaries know how much influence we have. Like, for example, even over China, that prevents them from going and invading Taiwan right now. They might eventually do it, but they're thinking twice because of how much influence we have. So honestly, like we are, like our financial power is unmatched in the world when it comes to the United States. And if anybody would qualify as a quote unquote globalist, it would be us.
But man, I got to tell you, man, sometimes I see some of the goofiest takes, like, and it's not, they're not often, but they're just wild when I see them, like, just to let you all know. But sometimes when I see takes like that, I'm like, I don't really think a lot of people even understand the stupid stuff that's coming out of their mouth when they say it. And I don't mean to be rude about that, but ideas like that are just stupid. There's really no other way around it. I can't even act like it's a good point, because it's not a good point. Because then you're literally advocating for exactly what a lot of these people said was wrong with the world, is that everyone's telling America how to run itself. So now that we're in charge, let's go around the world telling everyone else how they're supposed to run themselves and punish them for not making the domestic political decisions in their own country. That doesn't even bother us. Like, are you a German? Like, let me ask you that. Or like, to the person who said that in the chat, are you a German citizen? Do you happen to travel to Germany like every weekend, and you happen to just have, like, I don't know, like, need a Glock 17 while you're traveling around? If you're not a German citizen, then German internal affairs do not matter to you. Shut the hell up about it. If you're a foreigner and you're talking about what's going on inside of the United States and you like it or don't like it, it's an internal matter. Like whether you like our president or not, like, I just got to say this to folks who want to have a say outside of the United States. The United States' internal affairs are our internal affairs. The United States, by majority, voted for that guy, so it's America's problem. Like, it's affecting a lot of people around the world, but trying to act like other foreign countries should have a say inside of American internal affairs, or that the United States should have largely a say in internal affairs of European countries, is absolutely asinine, because that starts to remove it from foreign policy, and then we're treating the European Union like a myriad of U.S. states. And they don't even have representation in the U.S. government. We don't have representation in their government, so that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, that's just goofy from top to bottom.
Could you imagine how angry Americans would get if, let's say, Ukraine decided to start saying, we want this new candidate here to be the president now. We want this guy. Could you imagine how angry people would get? Like, that would cause an outrage like never before seen if they did that. If any other country did that toward the United States, it would be hell to pay for that. But, the other way around, the United States kind of does whatever it wants, and nobody really gets to say anything. It's just kind of what it is.
Yeah, foreigners don't need to be involved in our elections until it's a foreign election, and then we can go get involved in their elections and stuff quite openly. It's just a goofy thing. Like, at this point, really stupid. But yeah, I like and then of course some people want to get offended. Oh, look, the enforcer's been exposed to certain political party. No, that I feel like that's a common sense kind of an idea. Like that ought to just register within a well-rounded brain that's not mentally ill. That you don't really get a say in other countries' internal domestic affairs if you're not a citizen of that country. That's largely what I'm trying to get out right there. So if you happen to not be able to click the dots on that one, I'd have to say that you're either mentally deficient or you didn't really learn a lot in school. It had to be one of those. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight. We have a pretty decent amount of it still from the Middle East and also from inside of Ukraine. But before we get on into that, I do want to make sure that we address some of the questions that we've gotten tonight before we move on. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so our next one here goes to David Dornblasser, who puts in a $100 donation, the largest super chat of the night. And thank you very much, David, for that massive support, by the way, and we appreciate that very much. David said, buckle your belts.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I suppose that there will have to be some belt buckling going on around here, David Dornblasser. I'm not too happy with that, but I guess we just kind of have to deal with it for the moment, and hopefully things will get a little bit better here in the future. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Purple Gerbil, who puts in a massive 50 as well. And thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for coming in with that big support and helping keep the channel running also. And Purple said, please take a live chat question, and long live the LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running with that incredible support. And I gotta thank you, Purple Gerbil, for throwing in your 5th super chat ever. Of course, a member of the Lee Spring Army, all the way up from the nation of Canada, an incredibly cool country with a lot of trees. No reason to mention that, but beyond that, I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we will make sure to take one from the live chat. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Canada is Sovereign, who says some reports are saying that Ukrainian intelligence believes Putin will do another mobilization. And have you heard this?
And I got to thank you so much for the support. And, well, I don't even know why the hell I'm saying that, Matthew. I got distracted by a live chat. But, Matthew, can you reread that one again?
And yeah, Peace with War said if, let's see here, it was Canada's sovereign, actually. I've already put it in red, so I got mixed up. But Canada's sovereign said some reports are saying Ukrainian intelligence believes Putin will do another mobilization. Have you heard this?
I actually have not heard that yet. To be entirely honest, it's not anything that I would doubt. To be entirely honest, it seems to me though that would be highly possible, especially if it is clear that the war is going to be going on probably through the remainder of this year, which is still a pretty decent chance that it could be. We could see that they try and call forward another mobilization. It's not well. The losses have dropped a little bit. They've gotten down to being on the low 1,000s, but that's still a pretty significant amount. That's about a battalion tactical group and a half each day that they're losing in wounded and killed. So they probably do have to continue to bring in a decent amount of reinforcements or do another wave of partial mobilization to be able to try and keep the war going, especially if it keeps going through this year, just in terms of manpower losses alone. Not that they will really have the equipment to see them through the remainder of the year. It's already very clear that they're running out of equipment at this point. So I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least from what I understand. And thank you so much once again, Purple Gerbil, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running and we wouldn't be able to make it possible. So a huge thank you to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting right on into the news.
All right, and this one goes to none other than Hokey Redneck, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you, Hokey, as well, for that $50 support and helping keep the channel running. And he said, Enforcer, have the UK, France, Deutschland, and Poland ever been on the same side of a war?
Has the UK, France, Germany, and Poland ever been on the same side of a war? Let me think about that. Actually, technically, yes, they were all on the same side in the war in Afghanistan. They were on the U.S.'s side because the U.S. invoked Article 5 because of 9/11, and we actually saw that the entirety of NATO actually ratified that Article 5 provocation, and then most of those countries sent some form of a fighting force with us to Afghanistan. So technically, that actually would be a conflict that they were all on the same side of, but trying to think of any other conflict, I really cannot think of one. Because for the most part of modern history, Poland didn't exist. It was largely divided up in between the Russian Empire and the German Empire, or the predecessor states to the North German Federation, or the North German Confederation, and then later on the German Empire. So largely I'd have to say no, because for the most part, Poland really didn't exist through most of that. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And also, Mancub said goal for. I don't really think so. Let me go check though, because I do not think that the Polish were present. Yeah, the Polish wouldn't have been present for that conflict because they weren't in NATO yet. And of course, here's all the active members: the United States, the United Kingdom, France. No Germany, and no Poland. And also that wasn't an Article 5 provocation. And on top of that, Poland was just escaping the Warsaw Pact at that point in 1991, so they wouldn't have been able to have joined NATO yet to actually be involved in any kind of a conflict later on, so they were not present in the Gulf War. So I think the only one at this point that all of them would have been involved in on the same side would have been the war in Afghanistan. With that, also, Walter A. Lakota said, the Crimea War. Once again, I don't really think that Poland existed in the Crimea War. Let me go make sure and check, because I think the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been long gone by that point. So let me go and check. Yep, it looks like it had been. Looks like the Duchy of Warsaw was actually under the control of the German. Let me go check that, actually, because that's an interesting thing right there. That map is showing a Duchy of Warsaw. And I'm fairly certain, unless if I'm getting my maps wrong, I do not believe that anything Polish exists. Let me go get a map of Europe. Map of Europe during 1853. That'll give us a good answer. So, this would be... Let me see if I can get us a good map of Europe in 1853. So yeah, it looks like Prussia and Russia really existed over the plains of Poland in that time. Poland did not exist. So technically, there would have been no way for all of them to have been on the same side of the conflict because, one, the Prussians were not involved in the Crimean War. Britain and France teamed up with the Ottomans to defend the Ottomans against the Russians to maintain the balance of power in Europe because of the Congress of Vienna in 1815. But Germany and Poland were not involved. So technically, that conflict still wouldn't really fit the cog. I think the only one that really would fit would be the war in Afghanistan. But still, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I think that's about the best answer I could give with the historic knowledge that I have at this moment. And I might still be wrong, but the war in Afghanistan is a surefire, yes, they were all on the same side during that conflict. But with that, it is time for us to move on. Also, Sex2 said Poland was in the Gulf War, 320 personnel and 2 warships. Really? Let me go see. Poland in Gulf War. Polish involvement in the Iraq War. So they were involved in the Iraq War. Let me go see if I can see anything about did Poland fight in the Gulf War. It doesn't appear that they were. Let's see here. Iraq-Polish relations during 1942, 1990s. So it doesn't really appear that they were ever militarily involved, according to this. They did help get intelligence officers out of Iraq through Turkey, so they had some sort of an intelligence ring that was helping out inside of Turkey, but it doesn't appear that there's any direct mention of ground forces being involved in the Gulf War. It looks like they were more so involved in the invasion of Iraq in 2003 instead, and also they were involved in the war in Afghanistan to a limited extent as well. But anyways, I hope that does address that somewhat well, and with that, we are going to be moving on out of this question segment and on into the remainder of the news, because we still have a large amount left to cover. First off, we were able to hear that on the second day of the second Syrian civil war, it appears that 2 days of clashes and revenge killings in Syria have left more than 1,000 people dead, making it one of the deadliest days in Syria since the conflict began in 2011. An absolutely horrific thing. Really, we can't even really talk about it too much because there's no videos or pictures to show, because all of them were too horrific. But beyond that, Zelensky's interim government is actually as brutal or more brutal than Assad's regime ever was, at least from what we could see so far. So it doesn't appear that Syria is in any better hands with Zelensky and the interim government than they were under Assad, which is an incredibly sad thing because everyone knows the atrocities of Bashar al-Assad. But moving on from that and into the Islamic Republic of Iran, we were also able to hear that the Iranians are remaining dog-headed, and Iran has denied receiving the President of the United States letter and dismisses nuclear talks, and has also stated that Iran will not accept America's demands, according to Khamenei. And so it appears that they're going to be waiting and seeing, much like all of us, what the big action's coming up in a few days that the Israelis and the United States may be conducting against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And it looks like that.
Did you hear that? I think it was Qatar was saying that if the United States or Israel goes in and strikes the nuclear facilities near the coast of Iran, that somehow that's going to taint their water supply or something like that. Did you hear that?
I did not hear that. That's interesting.
Yeah, let me go grab the post real quick. It's on our Twitter page. I found it interesting. I was like, it's going to taint their water supply. I'm like, what? I'm like, how's that going to work? But let me scroll down and grab it real quick, and I can send it to you so that way we can take a look. Let me scroll down and grab it real quick. Here we go. Let me share it. Hopefully I read it properly, but I'm sending over the Discord, and there's a shared link right there.
Got you. So let's take a look at that, and let's go here on to Twitter. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul unpronounceable. That's an incredibly long name. Warns an attack on Iran's Gulf Coast nuclear facilities would leave countries across the region without water. The sea would be entirely contaminated, and Qatar would run out of water in 3 days. Oh, wait a minute. That must be because they use desalination plants to get their water, because there's no running fresh water really anywhere in the Middle East. So apparently their concern is that there may be some sort of radioactive contamination of the Persian Gulf, and they wouldn't be able to desalinate the water because it would be irradiated. Maybe that's their concern. But at the same time, though, that really wouldn't happen, because that would be absolutely stupid if we actually bombed an active nuclear power plant, like that was actually running, because that would lead to a complete meltdown. And then, at that point, we're dealing with a massive cleanup operation. I do not think that if the United States and Israel ever conducted any kind of airstrikes, they're going to hit the Bushehr nuclear power plant, because it is running and operational, and that would be absolutely insane to do that, because the amount of damage that would cause in the Persian Gulf and really throughout the surrounding area actually would be devastating at that point. Do
you think Qatar's trying to run interference to try to get Israel and the United States to back off and not strike Iran for some reason? Because I'm not really sure Like, where does Qatar actually stand? Are they very pro Western aligned, or are they like kind of on the fence?
They're kind of on the fence. They're more on like a fringe, more so. Because remember, a lot of the leaders of Hamas just lived inside of Qatar in Doha, absolutely free. You know, well, not really absolutely free, but they were completely fine and really there because of the benevolence of the Qatari government. So while they are not vehemently anti-Western, they're not really pro-Western either. It's more so of a kind of a fence-riding thing with Qatar.
Yeah, it seems like they're trying to like run interference. Like, obviously, if it's going to cause a problem with their water, they should speak up. But at the same time, though, it's like, surely there's other ways to get around this, because what's the alternative? We just have to let Iran make a nuke because Qatar might have a water issue. It's like, I'm not sure which one's more important. I think I have a feeling which one's more important. It would probably be keeping the rogue state of Iran from becoming a complete powerhouse in a nuclear sense and being able to terrorize the entire region.
Also, another thing is that the United States would probably, or the United States or Israel would probably never attack the Bushehr nuclear power plant, because that's a peaceful use of uranium, and this isn't an enrichment reactor, meaning that it's being used to enrich a uranium product. This is consuming uranium-235 to produce electricity. So it wouldn't really make any sense at all to destroy or damage this facility, and also the fallout, the actual radioactive fallout from it, would be devastating, because hitting it with a bomb or hitting it with several bombs would of course lead to an out-of-control nuclear meltdown, worse than we've ever seen at Fukushima Daiichi or at Chernobyl. So that would make no sense to do such a thing. So hopefully we would see that would not be done. And also I think that the Qataris are largely running interference on that kind of a thing anyways. But moving on from that and out of that area, it's now time for us to get on into Ukraine, as we have been able to hear the air defense report overnight, and it was very impressive. 79 drones were shot down directly, along with one Iskander-K, at 54 drones also missed their target, mostly due to electronic warfare interference. Meanwhile, inside the Kursk oblast, we were also able to see a Ukrainian MiG-29 using air-to-ground ordnance near to the area of Tekhino to knock out some Russian depots. Check it out right here. Here comes the bombs any second now. And it's going to be
we got a Google Maps marker popping up. Oh, look at that.
Oh, and they took it down. Holy moly.
Also, by the way, I hope you all like that poll right there. I see people saying W poll. I love to see it. We love those polls, I tell you.
Man, we love the Poles and the Polish people. But moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see the Russians getting hit a little bit hard in Kursk as well. Again. Listen to that Islam. Babali.
Вон полетел, да, вон. Ой, блядь, он прям соседи падает.
Was it landing?
Oh yeah, it's coming into land. They landed.
Oh, man. It sounded like it throttled down to do a smooth landing or something.
Dude, you said, is he coming into land? I said, oh yeah, it's landing right there. And then pulled it up right on time. Oh, and another one.
That's a hard landing, brothers. Earth is sky.
Earth to sky, brothers, earth to sky. But moving on from that, we did get to hear that the Ukrainians will be holding their ground and they will not be withdrawing. The Ukrainians did state that there has been no encirclement that has been conducted, and it doesn't appear that the rear is being threatened right now by a Russian advance to cut off the main road to Sudzha. So at this moment, it appears that according to Ukrainian commanders, they are stating that they will be remaining in the Kursk Oblast for some time longer. We were also able to get the view of the town today from a Russian FPV drone that was flying over the city. And we can see it right here. And of course, Sudzha has been heavily damaged from Russian bombing and shelling over the course of the 8-month-long campaign where the Ukrainians have been inside of the city.
I'm just saying the FPS is trash.
31 frames? I can get better frames on my CPU. Absolutely ridiculous.
Like, you need 60 at least a game. Like this Call of Duty stream is just not up to par.
This Call of Duty stream is ass, bro. For real. It's like, this doesn't even look like a COD lobby, dude. This is like Battlefield or something.
Man, it's whack ass words.
Man, I like that one, actually. I had to think about that, but that was a good one. And then Heroic Fluffiness said, finally, a real hood review here. And I'd agree. This really does look like a hood. For an unfortunate reason. The Russians have been obliterating it, but still.
Also, so this is super high resolution for an FPV, Monster Lab said. Honestly, it is. Like, I'm not sure what the FPS really means right there, but it looks pretty clear to me.
You see it just unfortunately finding a Ukrainian APC and hitting it right there.
Yikes.
A little unfortunate, but still gave us a pretty significant view of the town before it went to no image. We can also see that the Russians filmed third person of them hitting the APC inside of Sudzha. Once again, Western APCs just don't really seem to do that whole exploding like a Roman candle thing when they get hit, which is something that must shock the Russians a great deal. But anyways, that's the end of that clip right there, and moving on from that and into our next clips, we were also able to see down near Budyshine something a little bit interesting. The Ukrainians found out the Russians were pulling a little sneaky here, a little sneaky breaky. And we're going to explain that here in a second. But before we move on from that, I had just been told that there was a Pole, and I believe that his name is Zhishnik. But beyond that, we have been able to hear that Iran says it will not negotiate with America, will instead escalate nuclear development. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. Some people say that Iran is going to get glassed. Some people are going to say Iran is going to get pummeled. Some others are saying Iran is going to get smashed. And some are saying that Iran is going to get pounded. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 37%, the overwhelming majority, said Iran is going to get glassed, while 31% said Iran is going to get pounded, and about 20% said Iran is going to get pummeled. I would say they're probably going to get pounded, pummeled, and glassed and smashed, all in that same order. But Enforcer, what would say you?
I would say a bippity bobbity boo. They're gonna get glassed, smashed, and bashed. Like I'm not gonna lie, it's coming for them at this point. It's gonna happen. And it's been a long time coming, to be entirely honest with y'all. But moving on from that and on into the rest of the news that we have tonight, we were able to see the Ukrainians uncovered a very ill Russian plot. The Russians decided to use old, unused oil pipelines to get into the city of Sudzha through the pipes and then pop up in the middle of the town and attempt to take it. It didn't go well. We see them hitting it with clusters. Well, you see that they've spotted the Russians in large groups.
They've evolved from the 2 group. They've evolved to the 50 group.
50 group, Liet. Where is number 49? I don't know. Get him. Go find them.
Also, by the way, when people say that Iran is going to get glassed, for the people asking, what does that mean? That means that the sand is going to get so hot and so heated, and it's going to burn, and it's going to turn into glass.
It's something that we can only use on the Middle East because most of it is sand.
That's how you make glass.
Yes. And then if you want to know how to make glass into like those little cool shapes, like those little neat birds, that's called glass blowing, and the hot dog man is an expert on that. But we can,
oh.
That was honestly a good one, though. And that's the end of that clip, but they were targeting them and hitting them. But some of y'all are wondering, well, what was the entrance to that was actually getting hit? Well, it was actually this. We have an endless amount of footage here of the Russians crawling through the pipes, trying to make their way into Sudzha. Here's one.
Ёбаный в рот, ну чё скажете, пацаны, где мы нахуй? В трубе, сука! Труба куда ведет? На Суджу нахуй, это же ёбнуться! Никогда...
No wonder the Ukrainians foiled the attack, because this guy was down there going, look at me, I'm in the middle of a tube, I'm walking through a tube. So you know the Ukrainians, man, were like over on the other side, and they were hearing, look at me, man, I'm going to the tube, at the tube. And they were like, wait a minute, someo's in the pipe, you know, and then they just got ready for him to come out.
подумал, 12 километров по трубе, сука, воду несу, ебать. Чё-то пробка не пропускает или чё случилось?
This takes the phrase one in the pipe to a whole new meaning.
This attack, in short, was a pipe dream.
Чё, блядь, происходит вообще? Видела моя малышка?
Dude, why in the world are they acting like little teenage pranksters, man? Like they're crawling down the tube going, we're really gonna get them good this time. And like the whole time they're going, it's like they're gonna hear you coming, you know?
When the Russians discover narcos, they're going through these tunnels. I think they're El Chapo or something. Buddy, you're far from it.
12 километров, а так всё нормально.
That's the end of that clip, but we have a load of these. Like, it's a gift that they made so many of these before they got mowed down in Sudzha. So here's another one. They're in the tube. Yeah, but...
Yeah, is that Paulie? You got Tourette's, boy? Man, this tunnel right here is so well made that El Mencho would be proud. They've even got trash down there. Look at that.
Man, wherever the
I'm not talking
Russians
about
are,
the Russians.
wherever the Russians are, there's always trash. I don't know how it happens, but they can be there for like 3 minutes and there's already trash. But we did get to see another view of the failed attack. And then they popped up in the middle of Sudzha. Unfortunately, I didn't really get any footage of it, but they got obliterated. It was a complete failure. They popped up somewhere, from what I saw on the map. Let me go see if I can show y'all. They popped up somewhere around here, within this area. I do not know the exact location, unfortunately. Let me see if I can find anywhere where it looks like there would be like a pipeline, kind of a pumping station thing, where they could have popped out. But it was somewhere up here in this part of Sudzha. But they got schwacked, from what I heard. None of them made it out, really. Apparently climbing out through an open pipe one at a time is a way to get everyone obliterated. So, you know, it appears that it didn't turn out well for them. But moving on from that and out of that little clip in that area, it's now time for us to move on into our location unknowns. And we were able to see the Far Rangers. Unfortunately, once again, this is a video from United 24. It's 10 minutes long, and we're already running overtime. So, unfortunately, we'll not be able to show this one to y'all. But if y'all do want to see it, the link is in the description below, and you go check it out for yourselves. Moving on from that, we also got to see Romanian air defense. This is a CA-95, pretty much a modification of some of the different Strela platforms that have been used in the past. This is a modification of an older version of a BRDM that had been modified into the air defense role, and the Romanians have provided a substantive number of these, but we do not know exactly how many. We also have been able to see that the Sky Ranger has now been developed for the Ukrainians with a Leopard chassis attached to it, so that way they can turn it into a self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. Take a gander at this creation.
Look at that thing.
This is incredibly cool. The successor to the Gepard.
Def Gepard. Look at that thing roll.
Man, look at it.
I like how they bring these things to the most scenic, nice-looking areas, like this beautiful forest.
Man, that thing's purty, man. Oh, look, it's a shell head. Obliterate that thing.
Are you going to take down that Leody or let it fly over some extra?
Dude, that guy had the microphone in his mouth, though. I'm not going to lie, dude. He's like, it's right on top of us. Get it. And then
Oh, man, the microphone's getting very wet off of that one.
We see him tracking it. He's tracking it. He's tracking it.
Hey, they're pointing at us. Hey,
oh,
bro.
my God. Like, no. And, oh, here it comes. And there goes the blasts. Oh, and they got it. And that thing's going down. Man, I got to tell you, those things are just so cool. I also like the AC duct over there in the turret. Very, very industrial looking. But beyond that, really neat, really cool to see the Sky Ranger 35 now being put onto a Leopard chassis. But honestly, man, you know what's crazy about those videos from Rheinmetall? It's like they always take it down here into like this area, like near to a mountain like this. They'll be like, oh, yes, this is scenic enough. All right, let's test the weapons here. You know, it's like, why here? You know, it's like, they could do it in, like, you know how America does it, man. We would do it in, like, the plains of northern Germany, where it just looks like, let me actually get y'all in here so that y'all can see what it looks like. Actually, this is pretty. I didn't expect that. Let me go find somewhere that might not look pretty, so that we can kind of get the idea across. I think I'm losing this competition. I don't really
Yeah, I
think.
think so. I think
Yeah.
you're figuring out that Europe looks a little bit better than our countryside. But I would say, generally speaking, I think Rheinmetall's like, let's go on a vacation and let's write it off on the taxes and let's go to beautiful looking scenery to take our military vehicle.
Now, this is where the U.S. would test a weapon system. Bow, 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 you know, something like that. And then we test it. That's just where we would test it. And you can see right there, welcome to Hill City, home of a hill. That's the
Hell,
whole.
boy, they brought out that new tank to test in our backyard. Let's go back there and take a peek at it, eh?
Man, why the hell are we testing this tank when Europe could build it? It's just like, I don't know, man, shit. But also, Dodge City. Everyone's got to love Dodge City. Dodge City, a legend of the West. A real legend of the West. This place used to be crime-ridden. Now it's a tourist trap. Oh, what's this? An Atchison to begin Santa Fe Pacific? Bizarre. Anyways, we're going to move on from that before I get sidetracked. But anyways, moving on back into our location unknowns, we also were able to see the Russian casualty report and take a gander at that.
Oh, look at that. They got some Bobcats again. They got 3 of them this time. I'm going to say, I love to see 3 Bobcat skid steers added to the lost report. I don't think they're going to be returning that rental because I think it's exploded. I hope you got insurance. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, I got to tell you, the damn losses were damn dandy. I tell you that, my shit. But nevertheless, Miss Deesa, keeper of the records, told us what the numbers look like today. 225 days since the last day under 1,000 on the July 26th, 2024. And not only that, 148 drones being shot down, just 14 nights daily loss in the water. And 3 special equipment is sure as hell nice to see. But beyond that, we got incredible numbers tonight for all of you. So we got 1,000 Russians wounded and killed in the past 24 hours. Some people are saying that's only, but I don't think a lot of people are realizing how many people 1,000 is. I mean, 1,000's a lot. Diddy had 1,000 bottles of baby oil, and that was considered a lot. So if we're talking about 1,000 Russians wounded and killed, that's a pretty high number as well. I'll be dying, boy. But moving on from
But
that,
don't worry, he had 1,000 bottles of the sacred baby oil. But don't worry though, he saved money. He bought it in bulk.
Man, he bought it in bulk. We're Costco guys. We buy it in bulk. Wait a minute. Costco came out and made an official statement saying they do not sell baby oil or baby oil related products. Oh, well, that defense died right on the spot. Anyways, moving on from that.
Oh, man. You can't go to the Dollar General and buy it in that quantity. You got to go to the big box store for that.
Man, you got to go to them damn, Lowe's or them Home Depots. I heard they got
mortar.
Man, you gotta go to them damn brick and mortar stores. Hey, I know where a lot of them is, man. You can find a damn Dollar General out in the middle of nowheres. Like, shit, we could probably find one right now. I won't bother y'all with that. Y'all know what a Dollar General looks like, or at least our American viewers do.
I was about to say, we're surely not about to go on a Dollar General rabbit hole.
I was fake breaking that whole thing. But beyond that, we were able to hear that 12 armored personnel carriers were destroyed in the past 24 hours, along with 113 supply trucks, and that's a lot of supply trucks right there. I tell you, that's a damn dandy amount. 4 main battle tanks were also knocked out as well. I mean, look at that right there. Goodness gracious, that's a decent amount. 24 artillery systems were also knocked out. I got to tell you, you just never heard of artillery like that. I'll tell you, they're really putting the art in artillery. 148 drones were also knocked down, but I'm just droning on along at this point. Good golly. And 1 MLRS was destroyed, along with 35 cruise missiles, 3 anti-aircraft systems, and 3 special equipment. It was a great day.
Dang!
What is this, a Saturn bug?
Oh man, honestly though, if you're Southern though, you'll know that one. I don't say it because I don't get foul with it, but that gosh dang is like, if you're Southern, you've heard that at least a million times, I think.
Man, what the hell is this, man? They put a lily pad on my bugger, man. God damn. I did say it, though. I did say it. I copped out like at the last minute. But moving on from that and the Russian casualty report, we are going to be moving on into the northern front lines near the Kharkiv, where we were able to see that the Ukrainians were raiding Russian positions on this very day of the week. And they had that Chad music running. Rapid action in the forest of Kharkiv region is the title of this video. And they're going to be giving us some rapid action in the Kharkiv region today. I be dipped, I tell y'all what.
Honestly, it's groundless, so it's covered in like white paint.
Also, something that's crazy, y'all? I gotta share this with y'all. Whenever we do the, I call it the redneck accent, because not a lot of people in Alabama really speak like that much anymore. And also, like, Also, by the way, I just want to put this out there. All folks who speak like that are not stupid. Like, I know quite a many of people who speak like that. They're, like, close to being nuclear physicists. So I just want to make that a little bit clear. But beyond that, whenever we do that voice, there are, like, hundreds of people who leave. Like, there's an actual, like, stigma against that voice that people have. They're like, idiot, and then they leave. And it's like, what? It's like, it's not even that bad. I mean, it's
I'll admit it is pretty annoying though. Like after I hear myself saying it for a minute, and I hear you doing it, I'm like, okay, that's enough. I'm like, I gotta stop now too.
Man, I tell you what, my shit, people just hate us because we're Southern. I tell you what, man. Anyways, what you see the Ukrainians doing rapid action here in the Kharkiv front. Tossing the nade in, that thing's about to pop. And that thing's popping. And it looks like the Russians ain't popping, I'll tell you that. The only thing they popping is their joints down there.
Look at these ARs right here. I tell you, they're getting away from those AKs. It looks like they're really moving over to the AR at the wrong time, actually.
Man, but nothing can beat the Armalites. The Armalites were just great designed rifles. They still stand up to the present day.
They've really got kit on them too. Like they've really added a lot of attachments.
Man, Echo Divide said, do Shakespeare with a southern accent. To be or not to be? That is the question. You know, it's like, man, dude, imagine an entire play like a Shakespeare being done by southerners with that accent. Dude, that would be a trip.
That would be pretty bad. Honestly, that'd be about as bad as, you know, when they try to like take rap songs and they'll have like a symphony behind it or something like that and try to make it real sophisticated sounding, with the lyrics are just absolutely horrific. It's kind of like that. It's like the two really just don't mesh.
Man, riding around in a rover, call me Ed Sharpova when you see Oxman's over. Oh my, dude,
it's like, let's take these violent lyrics and put a nice like sophisticated symphony behind it. It's like, well, it's like, you know, I'm not sure you thought that was a good idea.
Oh, we had a little spicy one right there. I always see them, and I just don't think they're spicy. But moving down to Seversk, we did get to see some Russians surrendering down here. They even gave them like the parental guidance intro and everything. And we see here they're hitting them. As every video starts. Oh, that one went right in. And we see one Russian sticking his arm out and just waving it around. And we now need to see them kind of digging their way out.
Man, did they lock themselves in their own trench?
No, I think the Ukrainians blew up an FPV on it and pretty much like caved in their entrance, and then they had to dig their way back out.
Oh dang! Look at this camera. This thing's like was right up on them. It was like HD.
Man, look at that. They just following them along. What is this, man? A saddened surrender?
Honestly, like, look at them. Look at them go.
Man, they're holding up their hands like they're going to do like the little like Munster mash, you know? Like that's just like, it's not really like holding it up like they're surrendering. We now see them laying low.
Ah, look. A Ukrainian.
We see them now walking up to the Ukrainian.
I think he fell in a ditch or something.
I think he did. And we now see that they've taken the prisoners and they're processing them.
Bro's acting like don't know how to walk anymore. So what? You just forgot to like walk?
Crip walk. You know, something like, I don't know. Like, but anyways, we see them here. Oh, the cops are outside. Anyway.
Yeah, I heard him too. I was like, oh, it's the police.
Police! Citizens arrest! But anyways, when you see them here, they're chit-chatting. Sadly, we cannot hear. There's probably music playing over it. I'll put money on it. Let me see here, right?
Героям слава.
Oh. Well, there was music. It's just that we caught like the very last second of it. So moving on from that clip and a little bit further on down towards Chasiv Yar, we were able to see the Ukrainians evacuating wounded Ukrainians. And we now hear them playing that country music. Those sweet southern tunes. And we can see the APC coming on in. See a little explosion there on the left side camera. I don't really know exactly what that's viewing, but we see the Ukrainian APC coming on in. It looks like they've actually built a cope cage around the whole thing. We see them bringing in the wounded. I'll say up guy said, damn, every night, those police are busy. Yeah, I mean, they're busy. Like, you know, we thought we escaped, well, where we were from, which was pretty dangerous in its own right. And then we came up here to Birmingham, and I think within a year of being here, there was a shooting at the closest gas station to us, which was only like a mile away. We heard the gunshots and everything. Remember that, Matthew? It was that little domestic dispute, and they found the other one at the gas station, and they just showed up and greased him right there at the gas station.
Yeah, I remember that. And then a family member of ours actually had an incident at a gas station where they had to almost defend themselves with a firearm at one point because some lunatic pulled up in the gas station and was going to start getting crazy coming up to their window.
Yeah, it's been crazy around here, really. It's a very interesting place, the city of Birmingham. We now see the Ukrainian APC getting on out of there. And they are getting the hell out of there. And that's the end of the clip, but one hell of a thing to see. Very nice to see. Moving on from that and down to Tourette's, the Ukrainians are still advancing in Tourette's as of today, but we only got one clip out of the area of the Ukrainians hitting the Russians with an FPV, and that's about to happen right here. Right there. There they go. A dead-on hit. I don't know what they're showing in this part of the clip. It looks like the main front of the building, they're hitting them with another drone. We see them hitting it again. And that's the end of the clip, but very nice to see. Moving on from that now, the Touretsk area and down into Pokrovsk, or specifically the Selidove front that it's almost turned into at this moment, we were able to see a Russian supply road and what the condition of it is these days. And it's been turned into an veritable graveyard. In fact, the road's actually impassable, and this is one of the main reasons why the Russians are not able to move supplies beyond Selidove, is that most of the roads are in this kind of condition. Either they've been cratered, or a lot of vehicles have been wrecked on them, and they have not been moved off the roads, pretty much making vehicular support beyond Selidove impossible for Russian Federation forces. Moving on from that and down into the area of Kherson, we were also able to see that the Ukrainian armed forces were continuing to hit the Russians within this area as well. But, you know, of course, it's more so just strikes across the river. There's not going to be anything major to get from this.
Also, by the way, we just had a bot come in here and say that we were fools to think Russia's still losing. And the name of the individual's account was Iranian Kiddo. Totally not a bot.
Man, not a bot, man. The dead internet theory's been proven for years. You know that, man? Did you know that according to the numbers that people have been able to try and find out the best they can, about 70% of most all social media platforms, most of their traffic is most likely bots? Did you know that?
I'm not surprised by that. I didn't know that stat exactly, but I saw yesterday that China has a new AI agent now that can work as basically multiple different social media accounts at the same time. And it's an AI agent which can literally open up a ton of different social media accounts and start posting like real people. And it looks very, very legitimate. So I'm not shocked at all. But I would imagine probably a lot of the traffic on the internet probably is like fake accounts trying to sway public opinion from different countries.
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy, man, when you think about it. Like, it's actually insane. But moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, it's now time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1109 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Peach!
Which?
Дорогі українці, українки, сьогодні протягом всього дня тривали роботи в місті Добропілля на Донеччині після російського удару. Це був один з найбільш жорстоких ударів, комбінований удар, спеціальний удар був прорахований, щоб завдати максимальної шкоди. Ракети, також шахед по центральній частині міста. 9 житлових будинків були під ударом. Також під ударом торговельний центр, магазини. 11 людей, на жаль, загинули. Мої співчуття рідним і близьким. Серед загиблих працівник ДСНС України. Повторний удар відбувся, коли почали працювати рятувальники. Поранено 50 людей. Усім надано необхідну допомогу. Серед поранених 7 дітей. Наймолодша дівчинка, 10 років. Були сьогодні також інші обстріли Донеччини, також Харківщини, наших південних регіонів. В Херсоні знову удар FPV дронів по цивільним. Росія буквально щоденно доводить своєю жорстокістю, що для них там, в Москві, нічого не змінилось. Вони думають не про те, як закінчити війну, а про те, як встигнути, знищити і захопити більше, поки світ їм дозволяє цю війну вести. Звісно, ми робимо максимум для захисту життя. Я вдячний всім лідерам, всім тим дипломатам, країн-партнерів, всім громадським діячам, які підтримують Україну, які засудили ці російські удари і які називають всі речі своїми іменами. І важливо, щоб ми і надалі координували всі наші зусилля з нашими партнерами, щоб оборона працювала ефективно і щоб все зробити для наближення миру. Сьогодні наші команди України та Британії працювали тут, в Києві, над кроками, які можуть допомогти. Продовжуємо дуже активно комунікувати з усіма європейцями. Найближчим часом буде багато зустрічей, багато розмов. Вірю, що будуть рішення. Також постійно на контакті з американською командою. Ми готуємо зустріч в Саудівській Аравії. Впевнений, що зустріч буде результативною. Ми в Україні на це налаштовані. Дуже. З українського боку дипломатичні та військові представники, керівник офісу Єрмак, міністр закордонних справ Сибіга, ще кілька представників дипломатичного корпусу України, міністр оборони Умєров, заступник керівника офісу Павло Паліса, бойовий командир, який дуже добре знає фронт, знає ситуацію в бригадах. Зробимо все, щоб українські інтереси були враховані так, як потрібно. Також очікую на доповідь міністра оборони щодо нових пакетів підтримки. Передусім, ППО та інвестиції у наше оборонне виробництво – це дійсно ключові для нас пріоритети. Зараз майже щоденно партнери в Європі ухвалюють такі нові рішення щодо підтримки. Головне – реалізувати якнайшвидше. Дякую всім, хто з України. Слава Україні!
And Hiram Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And that rounds out this day's news summary here on day 1109. And that is moving us on to the second segment of the stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, is it a fun segment. Do we enjoy talking to y'all? Of course we do. We enjoy talking to every single one of y'all. And we have much to talk about. Many things to talk about. It's going to be a great time. That I know. And I know that many of y'all have been looking forward to this for the entirety of the stream, for the most part. At least from what I assume, hopefully. But Matthew, what do we got, Matthew? And also I understand that we have another poll. And what do we got for that poll?
Yes, so the polls have been mobilizing recently, and this is the fourth poll that's mobilized of the night. It says Ukraine says is preparing an imminent final strike on the Kerch Bridge in Crimea, and will it happen? 71% said yes, Ukraine will actually destroy it this time, while 12% said Ukraine is just bluffing again, and about 6% said Russia's fortified it too much, and it probably can't be taken out. Now, this was something that Ukraine said they were going to do last year in 2024, and it's now March 8th of 2025. So it was not done last year. So I'm really not sure. Russia has definitely fortified the bridge, but that's not a fail-safe for Ukraine taking it out. So I'm going to say that they might actually go for it, but I'm not really sure when. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, in my opinion, I believe that I'd have to be a little bit uncertain on that one. I think I'd have to be a little bit unsure. Once again, this has been said many times and not really accomplished, because the Kerch Bridge is one of the few things in the war that actually is steadily defended. So I would largely have to say I'd have to wait and see if it actually does happen this time. But I will be really surprised and actually pretty happy about it if they are able to hit it successfully. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least the best I can. And with that, it's time for us to get on into them questions. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat with the final question segment is going to go to none other than Hokey Redneck, who put in a second $50 donation. And thank you very much, Hokey, for supporting the channel big league, and we appreciate it very much. And Hokey said, can Europe make JDAMs and AMRAAMs?
Can they? Yes, they can. They can make JDAMs and AMRAAMs. Largely in Europe, they create their own versions of the AMRAAMs. Well, at least in some instances, the best version of the AMRAAM that's European made through and through is the Mika EM, or the Mika missile. This is their version of the AIM-120 AMRAAM, largely produced by the French and used on French aircraft. But they could easily be used, or Western aircraft could be adapted to use the Mika EM as their version of the AMRAAM. So the answer to that is yes. Or other countries can take on multinational efforts to be able to produce a similar kind of a system. For example, the Eurofighter Typhoon is a multinational effort in between multiple European countries. I believe it was largely the British, the Germans, and I think the Italians and Spain that all came together to invest and produce the Eurofighter Typhoons for their collective air forces. So much like they could create a pretty advanced fourth-generation fighter for all their countries collectively, they could also do the very same thing, but for a AMRAAM to be able to be used on board this aircraft. So it's entirely possible that they could pull that off. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to keep this channel rolling and make this thing possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can, at least. And also, this Eurofighter right here was seen at the Mach Loop. I'm sure many people know of the Mach Loop. It's famous. It's famous. Do y'all know of the Mach Loop? Matthew, do you know of the Mach Loop?
Yes, I do. The Mach Loop is very famous. It's a place where they take fighter jet pilots to train, and they go around these nice, beautiful mountains inside of Wales. It's known as the Machiavellian Loop, I believe, or something like that. I can't really pronounce it right.
You mean the Machiavellian Loop?
Something like that. I just say Machiavellian or Machiavellian or something like that. It's Welsh, so I can't say it.
Let's see. Let me type in the Mach Loop. Let's go find the Mach Loop. Ah, yes, the Mach Loop. Many of y'all
They just have it labeled as a ravine. What a disgrace to call it a ravine. This is not a ravine. This is a beautiful scenery.
Man, and look at that Royal Air Force C-130 right there. Pretty cool.
That is nice. It looks like it's made out of scrap metal, to be honest with you.
Honestly,
what's all the multiple colors?
That's what makes it kind of look cool to me, man. It looks like a scrap-built C-130. A little unique with that. But also, look at that F-15. Whoa. Look at that boiler.
Look at that. Look at those exhaust fumes. Look at that fuel.
Man, look at that F-35. And look at that L-39 Albatross, and look at that F-15E. Whoa, look at that boiler, and look at that Super Tucano of the Royal Air Force. Whoa, look at that Eurofighter.
It's a shame that we won't be able to come here anymore and use this, because the United States doesn't want to be. What the?
Bro, that's how I looked when I heard that we were pulling out of all the military exercises. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
Bro is like a diva bird or something like that. Thing is like posing.
Bro, that thing turned its head. Get it? Because it's a turn. Get it? But let's see.
It said, stop focusing on the planes and focus on what matters. Me.
Do you have permission to take my picture? Like, do you have permission? Do you have permission from your local council, governor? Do you? Beyond that, what a weird looking, like, I'm not gonna lie, that's the weirdest looking turn that I've ever seen, or seagull, or whatever it's called. But there's a Tornado GR4, I think. I think. Oh, look, an F-18. Wow, that's cool. Let's see. What else do we
Man, I like
have?
it when they get them dirtied up like that plane right there. Look how dirty that thing is.
Man, that thing be dirty. Look at that A400.
That's an Airbus defense plane, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the Airbus A400.
Yeah, that's nice. I like that.
Dude, I really like those. And look at the bottom of this F-16. Whoa.
I tell you, rustied up. I love to see it.
Man, any other good pictures? Any other good pictures of the mock loop? Any other good pictures? Oh, look at that. They got American flags on this one. This was from a carrier, actually.
Also, did they really hit Mach going around it, or did they not?
No. They don't hit Mach. Like, you're not legally allowed to really supersede Mach speeds really at all unless if it's an emergency over actual populated airspace, because there would be, the risk of blowing people's eardrums out, causing disturbances, distress, all that kind of thing. So they don't actually go Mach. But they get really close to it. I mean, it's like right on the edge of Mach speed when they're going through here.
Yeah, because I was seeing on that one plane, it had like the whole vapor cloud forming around it, like right before it actually crosses the sound barrier. It had that whole situation happening.
Like this?
Not really. It was like in the first photos we looked at, really up top.
Oh, let's go take a gander at that. Let's take a look. Let's take a look, Jack. Let's go take like this, Jack. What are you talking about? This?
No, go up some more. Go up some more. It was like really like one of the first ones we looked at.
Like really one of the first ones we looked at. Well, yeah. Oh, is it this?
There
one?
it was. That's one of them, and there's also one that was further up that was a little bit better than that one.
That's just the vapors coming off of the plane as it takes a nice sharp turn. Usually it happens like that. And also...
There it is.
I don't know if those are the vapors. That might actually be getting really close to Mach speed. But the Eurofighter Typhoon down here, that's just vapors. Because when the air has a decent amount of humidity in it, they start pulling turns. Because of how the air passes over the wing, it actually compresses the humidity almost into like a small cloud that quickly forms. And then as the air dissipates behind the wing, the cloud pretty much immediately disappears.
Yeah, they ought to just let them hit Mach through here, because I don't think there's any nearby towns that are to here, are there? Like, they're pretty far away.
No, man, there's just a town right there. Well, actually, that's more of that's not even really a town. Hell, man, just blow out the damn eardrums. They don't need ears. But there's the town of Donegal. Well, our family, just to let you all know, is from Wales. I don't know how to pronounce their town names, but there is this town not that far away from it, which they probably hear the sonic booms all day. So that might be a bit of an issue. How far are they from? They're not that far from. Like, there's really nothing out in Wales. I'm not going to lie. Like, once you get into North Wales, there's, like, no one there. We've been through there, and there's, like, the smallest of villages, but quite truly, almost no one lives out there. The biggest thing is Aberystwyth, and then up here, there's Plathamedog. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we went through this town before. Remember, Matthew, we went to the Tesco there, and then we were at the gas station down here, and that's when we saw the little train pass by on its way out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, yeah, we do remember it, Governor. There's the train. Hey, look, there it is right there, actually. There it is.
That's the train. Look at that. The damn train.
The damn trains. Matthew's always wondering, how the hell can I always whip a train out of my ass every time we go on Google Maps anywhere now? And, like, it just happens. It's just how it works. But we went to this gas station right here. It was literally this one, and we were on that spot where that van is that says liver on it.
I think this is about the spot we were trying to figure out where we were going to stay because we didn't have a hotel.
Yeah, that was always a bit of a problem. Like, there was never a hotel that we were able to find. And I was saying, why don't we go to Carnarvon so that way we could see the really cool castle up here. Let me see if I can go find that castle. Where is that castle? There it is, Carnarvon Castle. This is a cool castle. Take a gander. Let me get a good picture. Take a gander at that.
Take a gander at that. Look at that. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
That's what they say, but I really personally think that ganders and geese have different kinds of health standards, and they have to be looked after differently. But that's only my opinion. We are going to create an entire stabbing match in the chat over that one somehow. But still, very nice castle. And then not that far up the way, if I remember correctly. Actually, I might be thinking of an entirely different... Yeah, no. Actually, not that far up the way, there's Conwy Castle, which is also a really cool one right there.
Yeah, that's not bad looking. I mean, I will say this: we're obviously our heritage is Welsh. I'm not the biggest fan of Welsh castles. Like, of all the castles,
Well,
they look fine, but they're not the like best looking castles.
well, I'll have you know, none of these were built by the Welsh. They were all built by the English as they were conquering the Welsh around the 12th and 13th, well, the 13th and 14th centuries.
Well, see, that's why in my bones I knew I really didn't like them because we didn't even build them.
That's why in my bones I knew I didn't like it. But there is one castle that is really cool to us that doesn't even really exist, but I'll show it to y'all because it's cool. It's this one, the Hindoman Mound and Bailey Castle, and it's just that mound right there. The whole castle was built of wood, so it doesn't exist. Only thing that exists that's left is the earthworks, and it hardly exists at that. But that is actually where, I'm not even kidding, that is where our family started, was on that mound. Like, the first person who ever had the last name that we have in our family was born on that very mound right there sometime around the 1040s, we think. We don't actually know when he was born, but we do know that when he died in 1075, 10 years after William the Conqueror had defeated King Harold of England at the Battle of Hastings. And for really those 10 years that our first person in our family was the King of North Wales, he was involved in almost a guerrilla warfare campaign against the English, or really against the frontier cities and towns of England, near to places like Shrewsbury and Oswestry, which isn't that far from Montgomery in Wales, which is also a little bit eerie. Like, I don't know if I should share this one with y'all, but Montgomery is our hometown where we're actually from in Alabama, and the first person in our family in history, which was from about 1,000 years ago, was born literally just miles away from Montgomery, Wales. So a little bit like weird and odd how that works.
Also, what's weird and odd as well is my dogs, the two corgis, they come from Pembroke, which is over there in Wales on the coast.
Down here at the Pembrokeshire Coast National Park, which is really pretty.
Yes, my dogs came from there.
My dogs. Like, I love those dogs. Look at that. Where in the world is this in Pembrokeshire? That's really pretty, actually. And look at this, man. It's such an impressive place. I'd like to go back to Britain and see it one day, me personally. I would like to go all over here, to be entirely honest with y'all. My mind has been open to the world of Britain. Oh, look, here's Pembroke right here, Matthew. Wait a minute, is there a Navy Yard somewhere here? I thought it said Navy Yard up there. Apparently not. But they have some pretty big ferries that run out of here.
Yeah, they do. It looks like almost like a cruise ship or something.
Yeah, it does. I think that's one of those ferries that heads to like Dublin or something like that. Let's see. Oh, it's not there in this picture. But there's a look at the tide, dude. That's one thing that's always so weird about Britain is how the tide really goes way out and then comes way in. Because in America, like, the tide is almost unnoticeable. Like, really, like, you never really notice that the tide's changing too much. It's like maybe like a foot change. But over there, it's like multiple feet. Like, areas that are covered in water in the middle of the day, in the afternoon and morning, it will have like no water there at all. It's really weird. But let's see. That is, oh, here's Pembroke. Let's take a look at Pembroke. What does it look like? This is where our dogs are from. Actually, our dogs are technically from Missouri, but the original breed is from here. There's the castle. Matthew doesn't like them. They're made by the English. But look at those rocks.
Yeah, I think that might be where the Corgi Nation actually began.
Man, that's where wee Scrimpy got their first breath of life, was here in this town. But beyond that, pretty cool. And also, you know, something else that's pretty cool about this area, is that this area was the first, all of the like southern Welsh states were actually less populated at the time, like speaking about like the year 1000. It was actually far less populated down here on the southern Welsh coastline than it was in the north. The north was actually where the population was at this time. But a lot of people wouldn't know that because nowadays pretty much everyone that lives in Wales lives on its southern coast and really nobody else lives further north than that. It's very small towns beyond that. But that all changed because during the 1700s, coal mining became a big thing in Britain because of the need to fuel the country, and there were really no forests left that could provide enough firewood, so coal was the next best thing. And so all of the coal veins that were ever found in Wales, there were some spread out throughout the entirety of Wales, but most of the rich coal veins were actually in the southern area of Wales down here. And that's why cities like Cardiff and Newport and Swansea began to skyrocket in size, is because so many people began to flood from North Wales, from really the countryside down into southern Wales, to get into the lucrative coal mining business, because it was better than just being a farmer. And so that's why the southern area of Wales is so populated, and the northern area of Wales is practically just completely empty at this point. It's sparsely populated anywhere. You can't even find a hotel out there hardly. It's so sparsely populated, but it's also really pretty, because that's what it looks like.
Yeah, I like the scenery in Wales. Like, I thought it looked really good. The whole like Snowdonia area looked nice. The coastal areas look nice. They look very good.
Yeah. You know, another nice place. Speaking of Britain, that was really pretty. And let me make sure I'm getting it right. I think it was the Peak District. Yeah, it was the Peak District. We drove through here, and this was a very pretty part of Britain as well. It's right in between Manchester and Liverpool, but it was gorgeous. Really, really cool stuff through here. And I think there was an area, Mandy, we passed some sort of like a military facility somewhere out there, you know, with like the domes. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's that really secretive base that houses like some type of like. It's almost like the same things like the Australia base, what they're housing. I don't know why the name's escaping me right now.
Pine Gap?
Pine Gap. Yeah, it's like Pine Gap, but it's like England's Pine Gap.
I wish we could find it, because I know that we drove through Harrogate. Let's see, we drove from York to Harrogate to Skipton, and then we drove through Manchester, and then into Liverpool. I'm not really remembering where that was. Wait a minute, here it is, Minworth Hill. That's it right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's go look at it, because this is the road we drove past on, and I think it was like right up in one of these little clearings right here. You could see the domes on some parts of the road. Hedges are a big thing in Britain. You really can't see beyond the streets too much. It's honestly kind of claustrophobic, but sometimes the little stone walls that they have will get right up on the streets. So like if you make one wrong move, you're slamming into a rock with the side of your car. But yeah, Minworth Hill was really wild to see from the street, and it's just in the middle of Britain. But Harrogate was pretty cool, and so was Skipton. I remember that Harrogate was really neat, and we drove through it, and we were like, wow, this is really cool. So if you are from there, like we actually drove through your town years and years and years ago before we started running this. And also, what is the Royal Pump Room? Do they have pumps? I don't know what this is. That's just creepy. Well, I sulfur well. I wouldn't drink that. But like I wouldn't drink out of that. But let's see. What else? Ripley's Believe It or Not castle? No way. It's real. Maddie, this is where
this
the Ripley's...
castle looks better. This castle looks better than the other castles.
This is because this is kind of like a fake castle. It wasn't really meant for like defense. It was probably built in like the 17th or the 18th centuries by someone who was wealthy, and they were like, I would like a castle, but not really. And so then they built like a normal house that just looked like a castle. Because look at it, it's not defensive in nature at all. The walls are not thick. There's massive windows, even on the bottom floor. That is not a castle. That is more so a manor that's made to look like a castle. But still nice. Like, I think it actually does look pretty nice. Oh, look at that. Oh, well, that's a video. I was about to be, look at that right there. What is the Cold Stones cut?
Is that where they make that ice cream?
I was about to say, I was like, is that a Cold Stone Creamery? Like, I was like, is it? Oh, well, look at that. It's a quarry.
That's right next to it, too. That doesn't look right.
Dude, this person is not falling over. Stability isn't guaranteed on this bike. Like, no doubt.
Look at the bicycle seat, though.
Dude, asses will be chapped on this day.
Yeah, honestly.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, dude. Rest. Dude, someone just put that in. It's like, thank you for reminding us. I just didn't know. But this is an interesting place. But let's see here. Man, there's, like, honestly, it's really just cool to look around. Like, one thing I did today, just to let y'all know, is I found out this whole place that I've really gotten interested in, which is the Mittenwaldbahn, which is a railway route. Of course, everyone knew it was going to get to that. From Garmisch, Partenkirchen, which I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, down to Innsbruck in Austria, and it goes through the Alps. The whole place was gorgeous. I didn't really know of that route before, so I got in Train Sim World and drove it. I was like, wow, and it is so beautiful. Like, look at Seefeld. This is one of the towns that the train passes through, and it is insanely beautiful. Like the little Austrian chalets, the beautiful Alp mountains around it. I mean, it's just an incredible place. I was like, this is cool. And also they have this fake castle that they built for some reason at some point in time, probably in the 70s or the 60s. But it was one hell of a place. Look at this. Look at that.
That is nice. Look at that water.
Man, look at all that water. The aquatics would feel at home. But it is so cool. I really do want to go and see places like this someday. Because who would have ever thought that mountains like this existed in Austria? I mean, everyone does know because 70% of Austria is made up of the Alps. But who would have ever truly known? Like, really? But still. Also, what this national park is called Hohe Tauern. What does it look like? Oh, that's cool.
Oh, wow. That's nice.
Let's see. Wow. Look at that. Man.
That's very nice.
You know what? I think we need to increase the military spending and increase troop deployments to Europe, and we're going to put them all in the Alps, just so that way they can get free vacations. I think that'd be a great idea. But look at that. Man, that's just crazy. Look at that church! I'm a big sucker for churches. I always think churches look incredibly cool. And let's see. Look at that! Dude, this is just amazing. So much Ricola could be made out here. They're really squandering the opportunity. As a matter of fact, man, I think they should start deforesting everything in the Alps.
They should just deforest the hell out of it, honestly. That would fix it right up. Also, by the way, if you want to fly from where we're at in Birmingham to Seafield or whatever that was called us there, that's going to be a 17-hour flight, and it costs $1,300 round trip per person.
You know, that's actually not as bad as I was thinking it would be. I thought it was going to be like $2,000 something per person round trip.
That's looking a month out, actually.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, you had to fly a Boeing. Oh, no, wait a minute. It's an Airbus. Never mind.
I was about to say, dude, we better make our last rights.
If it's Boeing, I'm not going.
Dude, honestly, I'm kind of at that point, Sally. Hate to say it. And also, Monster Lab said a lot of World War I sites in those Alps. Yeah, there is. There really is, especially down near the Italian side, down here. I wish I could remember where some of them are, but they're really cool to look at because they built, like, sometimes they would build little concrete bunkers and stuff up there. But let me go see if I can find y'all pictures of the World War I Alps stuff, so that way I'm not looking at it on the map. And we can just find it out here instead. Oh, dang, where in the world? Come on! Let me, today. So here we go. Here's some pictures of these sorts of things today. This is a picture from one of the strongholds that I think the Austrians had in the mountains. This is a gun that was left in the Alps. Once they got stuff up here, they never took it out, so most of it just remains because it would take a laborious amount of effort to get it back down the mountain. So you can see that some trenches still remain up here, almost in perfect condition, like they were, because it's so cold and frigid up here in this altitude of the Alps all year round. Most everything actually just remained preserved. So you could generally find almost everything that was up there back then still up there now, like up here in the Dolomites. You can find the exact positions and trenches that were built way back then, over 100 years ago in the First World War, and they are still intact now, like this trench as well. You can even see that pretty much the wood bracing and the rocks are all still present the exact same way they were back then. That's really wild, honestly. It's almost like a preserved capsule of a very unknown front in World War I. Because really nobody knows that the Italians joined World War I on the Allied side and fought like 18 battles of Isonzo, and all of them almost took part in the, well, almost all of them happened in the exact same place, which was just right inside the Alps, and right down here, I think near the Trieste River. Well, I might be getting that wrong. I think it was, I forgot which river it is. Do not quote me on that. But almost all of the battles happened in those two same areas. So there is a load of artifacts and history from that, and it's really cool, actually. But beyond that, I hope that does give you all a very good look around Europe and a little good gander at some cool things. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I don't know since when flights got cheaper for going to England, but it looks like I remember back in the day, like the flights were crazy expensive. Like they were well over $1,000. It looks like these days they're about $500 to $600 to go to England from Birmingham, Alabama, which is
What?
crazy.
$500?
Yeah, they've gone down. Yeah, I'm looking at American right here. It's like a 600 round trip from all the way here to Heathrow.
Dude, that's crazy. We could actually go to the UK.
We could. The only problem is we'd be on a different time zone. Then it couldn't run the stream at all. That's the only problem.
Also, the other thing is that I really this is kind of a reality I have to work with. This thing takes up so much time in a day, and I pretty much have to run my day around the show that we really cannot take time off unless we just stop running the show. So that's also a bit of an issue with doing anything like that. Just to let all of y'all know, is that we really can't go gallivanting and traveling around because, simply put, if I'm running the show, there really is no chance to do that. And also having to lug all my computer stuff with us, that would be insanely laborious. And also, I would not trust the TSA to not damage my computer in the process of trying to get it over there, to be honest with y'all. They would break the glass or damage a CPU or something, then we'd be over there, and then we'd be out of a business, and we would be in the middle of a vacation, which wouldn't really be that good. So I hope that does address that well. And it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, I see our UK viewers are talking about, that would be excellent. Like, come over to the UK to run the show, so that way it'd be on our time zone. Honestly, that would the UK viewers would love that. The rest of the world would probably hate it because it would put the time zone all off whack. But yeah, man, I don't think we could ever really feasibly run the show like on the move like that. Because like you bringing your computer along, like you said, it'd be too much of a burden. I'm not sure if that would be like fit the requirements to bring even in your check luggage. I think it'd be too big. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to the notorious GRG, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Notorious, for that $50 support. That is massive, by the way. And thank you very much for being a longtime channel legend as well. And Notorious said, take a live chat, please.
And of course, Notorious GRG, we will take a live chat. And I gotta thank you so much for being a old guard and channel legend of the stream. And I gotta thank you so much for massively supporting the channel tonight and helping us to keep this thing rolling. And so, with that, we will make sure to take a live chat question. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat question goes to Leora Abigail, who says, the U.S. has not left NATO. If they attack Europe, I'm pretty sure we have to get involved. Am I wrong?
Technically, you're not, especially if the Congress declares war on the Russian Federation, then we have to get involved. And that's something that a lot of people are not thinking, is that, yes, there is sort of an executive privilege that's been given these days to starting wars, where the president can start them without a declaration of war, pretty much. But still, on the books, the Congress has the ability to declare war. So if Europe is attacked and the Congress wants to declare war, it doesn't matter what the hell the president says. If they declare war, we are at war. And the president now has to follow through with his duties of seeing that war out to its conclusion. And so if he does not do that, then you could easily open up grounds for impeachment that would probably be pretty easy and clear to show evidence of. And I don't really think a lot of people want to jeopardize their political career by having the United States in the middle of wartime and then say, why, yes, the president can just sit back and do nothing and let the United States get screwed. Not a lot of people be willing to really kind of stand up for that sort of a thing at that point. So technically, we kind of have to. There is a will and a way to do that. Even if we weren't in NATO and really the U.S. wasn't behind the president, the Congress could still just declare war on the Russians in support of Europe, and then it's the president's duty to continue on to the finish of that war and try and see America through to victory. And if he doesn't do that, then he can be impeached. And when I mean doesn't do that, I don't mean, the war, we're just losing the war because we're not doing that good. You can't be impeached over that. But if the president just said something like, I'm not doing it, I'm not sending a single soldier, then there's grounds to say that he's not fulfilling his part of his duties, which is, in the state of war, to actually see through that war, and then he could be impeached quite easily. I mean, there would be clear evidence with that, especially if U.S. soldiers were getting slaughtered because they were being given orders not to fire or to surrender or give up or just withdraw. Then clearly those would be, that would largely probably be viewed as treason at that point. So not only would there be an impeachment, but probably after an impeachment, there would also be some sort of a criminal process to most likely have the president held accountable for treason at that point, because that largely would, I believe, fit the description. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to, guess who? It is Hokey Redneck, who throws in the third major super chat of the night. And thank you very much, Hokey, for that third $50 support. He said, can you show the Eagle's Nest?
Can I show the Eagle's Nest? Of course I can. I know where that is. It's near Berchtesgaden, which was Hitler's hangout. This is where all the elites of Germany would go in Nazi Germany in World War II. Well, really before World War II even was Berchtesgaden. This is Germany's little piece of the Alps. Like, Germany's southern border actually skirts right along the Alps, so there's a decent amount of it. Well, not a lot of it, but there's a decent amount in Germany. But this little area right here around Berchtesgaden actually does scoop itself into the Alps and is actually around some incredibly impressive mountains. Let me show you all that by showing you all Berchtesgaden. That's what Berchtesgaden looks like. So you can kind of get the idea why this was preferred, because it looks really nice, you know, so it's like, you know, if you're the leader of Germany, why not try and build a little mansion here? Really, everyone in the Nazi German government that was, I guess you could say well-to-do or up in the higher circles, they all had their own little residences and houses that existed here around Berchtesgaden. But out of all of that, this little building right here was the Eagle's Nest. It's now a restaurant, I believe. But it was actually Hitler's Eagle's Nest, if you want to call it that. Let me go make sure that I'm getting the... Okay, here it is. It's right up here. This is it. There was more to the compound. I believe there were some other buildings, but those were entirely reduced to rubble after the war due to the denazification efforts. They really wanted to leave no trace or any really sort of lasting thing that could be used by supporters of Hitler as like a rallying ground or some sort of a thing to make it look like Hitler was a martyr, so they would get rid of all of it. But this little building right here did end up surviving. I forgot what the actual reasoning was for its survival, but it does exist now as a restaurant. And you can actually find all of the tunnels underneath it as well that would connect Hitler to the rest of the Eagle's Nest from this building. So a little bit interesting with that, but still, the view from it is amazing. I mean, it's really impressive. But once again, there were a lot of houses like this around the area of Berchtesgaden, and once again, not to shove this into people's faces, but it does have train access. So, you know, if you want to take a little trip on the Deutsche Bahn, it is entirely possible. I'm not really sure if the OB, which is Austria's nationalized railway service, has service to Berchtesgaden, but I do know that the Deutsche Bahn does. But look at that creek.
Look at that. Also, by the way, a fun fact, by the way, they called it the Eagle's Nest because that was the name of the building, the place here. But when Hitler was in residence, it was called the Rat's Nest.
Man, that's a good one. Like,
that's a good one, isn't it?
That was a good one, man. I wasn't expecting that one. That was good. Yeah, that's good. I like it. Yes, I like. But you know, dude, look at this roundabout. Look at this. Hold up. Let me see if we can actually see this well. Dude, crazy. The roundabout's built over the river, so when you go around it, the river's that is actually sick.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a look at it, but Discord's loading the stream in here, and I can't see anything.
Let's see here. I'll wait. You got to see this one.
Oh, I can see it now. Oh, yeah, look at that. That's nice.
Look at that. And then you're surrounded by the beautiful city of Berchtesgaden and the Alps around it. I mean, really a beautiful spot. But still, one day, hopefully, we'll get to see this stuff. Let's see here. Want to see if we can find anything else interesting in this town, maybe to take a little gander at. It's not a big town.
Honestly, like if we knew that like we could take like a week off in the stream and YouTube wouldn't punish us in the algorithms for it, I would say since we haven't had a vacation in ages, I would love to go on one, but you know it's too risky. We don't know if YouTube's gonna like deprioritize us in the algorithm or something like that. And also, by the way, we have like the swing of things going on right now. When you get out of that swing of things and you come back after a week, it's like it takes a lot of effort to jump right back into this grind like that. So sometimes it's easier just to stay on the grind and keep it going instead of taking a break.
Yeah, I have to agree with that a lot. Like that's something that you really don't think about until you take time off. It's always hard to get back into the swing of things of like running the show and monologuing and all that. It actually takes a little bit. But let's see here. Someone said that would be an awesome place to travel to. Here in Berchtesgaden, personally, don't mean to diss on Berchtesgaden, but I really would like to see the areas of Austria more so. Like the area around Innsbruck that I was talking about a little bit earlier. I would really like to see this area because I've always seen a good bit about Innsbruck. I don't know what the city actually looks like. Well, it actually looks quite nice. And I'd also like to see Switzerland, which is really cool. And I'd also like to go to Liechtenstein just to say I went. And I don't know if you can get like a stamp in your passport for that, but I'd like to see if I could get a stamp in my passport for going to Liechtenstein, because that would be pretty cool to say that we went there, and that we went to Vaduz, because Vaduz is the capital. And let's see, I think this is. Wait, hang on. Is this the? Nah, this isn't it. There's some sort of a building that technically counts as the. I think it's a lord who runs Liechtenstein still. There's a building there that actually counts for their official government seat. And I actually think it is the Vaduz Castle right here. I think that is it. Let me check, though, because I believe they offer tours and stuff of it. I'm not really sure of that. But it is a beautiful little castle right there. Anyways, with that, we do have to make sure to keep on rolling. We have so many super chats left, and we want to make sure to get to all of them. And also, by the way, if y'all want to know something, sometimes Swiss soldiers accidentally cross the border into Liechtenstein, and it's always a thing, because Liechtenstein is neutral, and so is Switzerland. So whenever the Swiss soldiers cross, I think it's the Duchy of Liechtenstein is its technical name. It says that the Swiss violated their borders and their sovereignty, and then the Swiss give like an official apology every single time. It's a funny thing. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I'm told by Tia Beery LSA that that Einsbruck that you're talking about, that's actually Innsbruck.
Ah, Innsbruck. Yeah, well, damn, I'm glad she told me. I wouldn't damn know. I thought it was damn Innsbruck. It looks like a damn inn, like a hotel you'd stay in. Well, damn, why didn't you tell me earlier, damn it? Like, shit. But anyways, thank you for clarifying that, because I will get pronunciations wrong every day of the week. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Rob McGuffin, who puts in a $28 donation. And thank you, Rob, as well, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And Rob said, will NATO countries see America as a threat with all these crazy moves being made? And this goes beyond pettiness. It's craziness.
It is pretty wild, I will agree. I don't know if NATO is going to view the United States as a threat, but I have a feeling if these kinds of actions continue even farther, they probably will start to view the United States as a threat, unfortunately. And so with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. Also, before we move on, though, I see someone brought up a Kriegs locomotive, like a war train. Actually, I was wanting to take that moment to bring up a little train that I ran into today, and it was just so interesting to me, man. I have to take a moment to talk about it, because I think you might find this one cool. This is the E94, which was an electric locomotive created by Germany in the middle of World War II, and it's still in service to this day.
Yeah, it looks like a mobile refrigerator.
Yeah, you know what's cool about it is that the locomotive is actually 3 separate parts, all in one.
Interesting.
Yeah, let me go see if I can find you a video of this, because when you watch it move, it's actually really bizarre, because the whole thing moves in like 3 different pieces, but it's all one interconnected piece. So let me go see, let's see, it is the, let's see, DB194. Let me go see if I can find this, because there was a video of one, and it was moving over like some crappy tracks. And it was really cool to see, because the whole thing was like bobbing and weaving with each part independently moving. And I hope that I can find that. Let me see. Maybe if I put in the OB 1020, maybe they'll find it better. 1020. Let's see. OB. There we go. And this ought to find it, I hope and pray. I hope and pray. Oh, dagnabbit. I don't... Wait, hang on. Dang, dude, I won't be able to find it. It was a really cool video, though, because I was like, it was like mind-warping watching this thing, because like the front dude would like bend forward almost, like it would like lean and tilt forwards and then like pop backwards and stuff, and the whole thing was doing that, and I was like, what the hell? And apparently the whole thing's also interconnected, so it's like, it's almost like the Holy Trinity, where it's like all of them are separate but the same at the same time. That's pretty much how this thing runs. And I was like, this is just bizarre, like, because I have always, like, thought of electric trains as always being one piece, but this thing is 3 articulated pieces, which is just whack, but really cool, nonetheless. Also, by the way, there's no seat in there for the engineer. You're standing the entire time you run it, and it looks like a boat in there. Let's see, 1020, cab, yeah. Let me go show you the cab, Matthew. You're gonna be like, what the hell? This is the cab. So he's got like a giant
the cab.
Yeah, he's got like a freaking captain's wheel. It looks like a tugboat in there, and he just stands at that position. There's no seat, so you have to stand while you run this thing. It's just the wackest thing. Like the whole thing is bizarre, but it's really cool because it's bizarre.
Interesting.
Yes, yes, indeed. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Shaky Jake 117, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Shaky Jake, for that support. And I believe that is your first ever super chat, I think. And so if it is, huge shout out to you for deciding to support the channel. And it said the live chat question in LSA.
And thank you so much, Shaky Jake, more like Dodgy Dave. But beyond that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. Just all jokes aside, and by the way, that's just a prank. I mean, no offense. We're incredibly appreciative of you supporting the channel, Shaky Jake, and I gotta thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so a huge thank you to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the live chat question requested by Shaky Jake goes to Kachulian343, who says, wait, so the Russian Kursk counteroffensive failed?
Not really. It did succeed in pretty much splitting the front in two. The Russian side did. But as far as achieving their goal so far of cutting off the main road in the Sudzha, that did fail. So it's kind of like a half fail. Technically, it's a defeat. Really, did they achieve their actual offensive objective? Technically, it is a defeat. But for the large part, it's still somewhat of a victory because they were able to break through the Ukrainian line. So, not like, it really depends on who you ask, because this one could kind of be up in the air. The Ukrainians will claim that the Russians were defeated because they didn't reach the R200. The Russians are going to claim that it was a victory because they split the Ukrainian front in two. So it's kind of one of those toss-up things where there is a decent argument actually to be made on both sides. But I hope that does address the live chat well, and thank you once again for sponsoring the live chat, Shaky Jake, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jocelyn White, who's also a channel legend and puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Josh, for that $20 support and helping to keep us running as well. And Josh said, thank you both. And it's been an honor watch you grow and get roasted by Leaf Springs and honor the honey badger. Hey, I almost forgot about the honey badger. It's been a minute since that one's been brought up. And Josh said, I always enjoy story time with Marmot and Fly and the adventures of Hot Dog Man and his bad choices. LLT, LSA.
And Hot Dog Man makes real bad choices. He's making worse and worse bad choices. He made a video today that only got 3,000 views. What a sad fate. What a sad fate. We'll eventually make it there. We'll eventually make it there. But beyond that, I do have to thank you so much for enjoying this channel and having been around for a hot minute. The Marmot and the Fly is always a fun segment, but of course, many people may remember this, but the official animal of the Leaf Spring Army is the honey badger still. The Marmot is just a fan favorite, but the honey badger still is the official animal of the LSA. And I gotta thank you so much once again for support and having been around long enough to know that, because it is cool to know that a lot of people have been steeped deeply in the channel's lore and history. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one. I saw that poll, well, actually, Matthew had to end the poll early because it said, are you a train fan? And 61% said yes, and 38% said no. So it's almost
the poll is rigged. It was so rigged. They need to go back to paper polling. It's so rigged.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, that gives me a chance to go look for that damn OBS articulated suspension again. Man, I'll tell you what, man, I gotta go find it. I'll tell you, man, when you see it, you'll actually be like, that is actually pretty cool. Dagnabbit. Let me, oh my God, I gotta try and get this quick, though, because I don't want to spend too much time trying to look for it. Let's see here.
This is taking a lot of time. I'm not sure if we have the time to spend. It's a lot of time. They're really taking the time. Stealing the time still.
Articulated electric locomotive. Let me locomotive. Let me go see if I can find it this way. Oh my God. Now they're gonna show me articulated steam engines. I don't want those. I put in electric.
We don't want those either. We don't want those here. No articulated train system here.
Well,
no.
Well, I couldn't find that, but I could find this really cool. It kind of counts, I suppose. Swiss. Well, not Swiss. It's an Austrian freight train, and it has this really cool sound when it like revs. I suppose, like if you can say electric trains rev. Do you want to hear it?
We can hear it.
All right, take a listen. You're going to like this. See how I did like the do-re-mi thing as it like went up in like power?
Yeah, that's I think isn't that a stepper motor or something?
I think, but this thing is pretty cool. And these things are torqued the hell up, dude. It got up to 120 kilometers an hour in like no time at all. Look at that.
I will say that is impressive that it didn't even chirp the wheels or anything.
Yeah, dude. Dude. Honestly, man, Austrian trains are goated with the sauce. Like I think they're just so cool. Even the modern ones, like that one, really, really cool. And they look great. I mean, like, look at the lines on this thing. It's just so smooth, sleek, and streamlined. Like, honestly, man, like top of the line stuff right there.
That's very nice.
Yeah, very nice indeed. But anyways, Matt, by the way, y'all, I kill Matthew whenever I talk about trains. He's like, oh my God, will it stop? So, like, I don't want to bother him too much with it. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wraith Cat, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Wraith Cat, for that support. They said, "What is your drink of choice?" Mine is Captain Morgan and Vanilla Coke.
And I thank you for the support. I don't really drink enough to have a drink of choice, so I'd have it to default to really the only one I've actually had, which would be a rum and a Coke. Well, a rum and a Coke. I sound like an idiot. A rum and Coke? But that would, I suppose, be my drink of choice, although I really don't drink enough to have one. But still, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that somewhat well. And we are on for the next one.
And our next one goes to Terrence Custer, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Terrence, as well, for that $20 support. He said, "Do you think the undersea cables will become less important as communication satellites like Starlink systems get stood up? Also, are cables safe from an EMP attack? Satellites aren't."
Technically, satellites are actually a lot easier to destroy with an EMP than anything, because if you blow up one nuclear bomb in space, this is actually crazy. Blow one single nuclear bomb up in space, you can pretty much knock out almost every single satellite that's in orbit right now. Very few of them would survive, because the radiation isn't contained like it is in the atmosphere, and to a limited degree, it is just allowed to do whatever it wants in space. So the radiation from that nuclear explosion and the electromagnetic pulse really has no confines. It can really knock out most everything in orbit at that point. As far as undersea cables go, undersea cables are never going to lose their importance or pertinence, at least here in the near future, because while satellites are becoming a little bit more of a thing, still, most internet traffic is being transported across those cables, not necessarily the satellites. And if we were to try and offload everything onto the satellites, it would overload their relay or their grid. So for that reason, I'd largely have to say that probably will not be happening anytime here in the future, because cables are still going to have a decent amount of importance. They eventually will become obsolete, but that might be a good while down the road. Another like crazy fact is that even if they become somewhat obsolete, they may never be completely discontinued. Because if I'm correct and not mistaken, I believe that the telegraph lines that were laid in between the United States and the UK are still maintained and operational to this day. Let me go check that. Transatlantic telegraph cable. Transatlantic here we go. Telegraph cable. And the cables have long since been decommissioned. I'm wrong. Completely scratch everything I said about the telegraph cables. They've been decommissioned and they're no longer at all being repaired. I was just saying that for the funsies, you know. I didn't mean it. I actually meant it, and I was completely wrong. But look at this. Look at that. Wow. How cool. Look at that. Look. Wow, the telegraph field at Valentia Island. Wow, how cool. How neat. And they had a celebration for it when it was laid. They celebrated anything back then. Honestly, they celebrated the stuff that mattered back then, honestly, man. Because nowadays, you could do something amazing. It could be something like, you know, we cured cancer. No one would come out to celebrate that. Like, they would come out and celebrate the Super Bowl, but they wouldn't celebrate a cure for cancer.
Yeah. But they will come out, though, and throw a celebration for, yay, look, it got laid.
What?
You know, they laid the cable. They came out and celebrated it.
Oh, I thought you meant laid in another way. I was like, what do you mean?
No,
I was like, what's going on here? What's going on, eh?
Like, man, what you thinking? Your mind's in the gutter.
Well, it sounded like that. I'm sure many others heard that as well. But anyways, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But I hope that does answer your question somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bobby, who puts in a 20. Thank you very much, Bobby. Doing a great job with the health department. That Talos really turned things around big league. Thank you very much, Bobby. Bobby said, thank you for the best, most informative war news in North America from another SW Ontario, Canada viewer and LSA.
And I thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running all the way up from Ontario, Canada, southwestern Ontario. Very nice place. Like to say that we really enjoy it, really like Brampton. Brampton, everybody loves Brampton in Ontario. Great place. Also, we like the city of Toronto. There are some people that we know from Toronto that I don't really like, but we still like Toronto. Great city. Honestly, gets a bad rep from those people. But nevertheless, we do thank you greatly for your support. We really do. It means a lot to us. And I do have to say that Canada is a really nice place, a beautiful place. I really like Kitchener. Kitchener, great place as well. But beyond that, I thank you for the support and greatly enjoying the show because folks like you help us to keep this thing running, help us to make it possible. And if it wasn't for people like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. So with that, a great thanks to you once again. I hope that this addressed it incredibly well. But before we move on, I do also have to say that Canada has too many trees. In fact, I am embarrassed by the amount of trees that Canada has. So for this reason, we are going to deforest the United States of America. There will be no forest left. You will go around and you will go, wow, there's no trees. There's like no air. And so I feel like I cannot breathe. And we're going to make that a nationwide thing. Trees are going to be gone. A thing of the past. Who needs trees?
We're going to deforest Yosemite so fast, and they're going to lose so much air, you won't have to worry about this. We'll be drowning in cash.
I gotta say that Yellowstone National Park and that stupid hanky-panky look at the nature shit is going to end tomorrow. We're going to be cutting it all down. It's not going to be a Yellowstone anymore. The bears are going to wake up and they're going to go, wow, that's a lot of fat wads of cash. Really crazy.
I mean, they've got that dangerous geyser firing water into the air 50 feet high. I'll cap it off. Too dangerous. Cap it off.
We're going to have to put a giant cork in that thing right there. It's not going to be bubbling up anymore. It is going to be bubbling down or blowing up, one or the other. It doesn't really matter. It would be completely fine because when it blows up, we can make sure to sell all of that delicious paper and timber to all of the Americans that will be needing brand new homes, and they'll be choking on ash, kind of just like they will be anyways, because there will be no trees left to filter out the air. Nobody needs air. Who needs air? I've heard that air is free. We're going to make sure to change that. We're going to tax the air. Every breath will be 5 cents, 1 nickel. We're going to call it Nickelback because if you're not breathing, you're going to be on your back suffocating. Call it Nickelback. Great band, wonderful band. People have come from miles around and gone, wow, that's a great band, an incredible band. And I got to be honest with y'all, that's a terrible band. I've got to disagree with many people. I've got to be on the trend. Everyone hates Nickelback for no reason. I don't really know why.
Excuse me, sir. But they've just made negative comments about your leadership, sir. Then I don't know who they are. I've never heard of that band in my life. It's a sorry band. I just looked into it today. I'm hearing things that band might suck. But I'm hearing things. It's not good at all. Some are saying it's the worst band in the history of bands. I'm just hearing things.
Let me call up that guy that I put in charge of the FBI who has the crazy looking eyes. Let me call him up. Hi, yes, is this Cash? See, I got his. I nominated him because his name was Cash, and I love money. Yes, I would like you to look into. I would like you to look into Nickelback, and I would like you to put them on their back and leave them with only a nickel because we're not gonna have that kind of shit up in my house. Click. All right, back to business. Anyways, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. Hope everyone got a laugh from that a little bit. But anyways, with that, we are on. We lost 1 subscriber over that. Very sad. I will weep many tears. The ratings have never been better, though. People have been looking at our ratings. They've been going, wow, those are incredibly good ratings. Everyone's been saying it. Absolutely everybody. It's been huge. Some people have been saying that it's been a big kerfuffle to do this voice, and I've got to disagree because the little rocket man, he's been really happy with the voice. He loves the voice. He wants to see it more, and he wants to hear it more. And what say what just said, you earned a like and a sub. This is awesome, man. Well, thank you. That's great to hear. See, the ratings are going up higher. They're going up great. Someone said that they're tired of this. Who are you? What organization are you with? I want to know what organization are you with. That's why your ratings are terrible. That's why nobody knows you. You call yourself iconic because you're looking for some recognition, but you're not iconic. You're the opposite of iconic. Call it uniconic because nobody knows who the hell you are or what you do or what hole you slid out. Well, everybody knows that was your mother's, but beyond that, we do not know where you're from or who you are or what people you're with. So you're going to have to go right back to where you came from because we're not having that up in here. All right, anyways, enough with that. It's time for us to move on to the next one because I am getting incredibly tired of winning. I'm so tired of winning. We're going to go over to Europe. We're going to cut down all of their trees. Nobody gets trees. You're going to have to pay for those. We're going to saw, baby, saw. We're going to saw them all down.
Come on, Jack. You've been rambling too long, man. Come on.
Well, we do have to move on because I have really been rambling. Also, someone asked for another impression. I wish, like, I hate to say this, that impression is a woman's voice. I cannot do women's voices. I believe me, I have actually tried to give that a shot off air to do that specific impression. I couldn't do it, so I just gave up on it. It's just impossible for my vocal range. Anyways, with that.
Oh, no, Mo. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay. Well, we're on to the next one.
That was supposed to be an impression of that. That was apparently so far off base you didn't even get it. But
dude, I thought you were making fun of me. I was like, I don't know what this is. Like,
that was an impression, but I'm just gonna ignore that though. I was just being facetious.
I'm gonna pretend I didn't see that.
Say what?
I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see that. You were pulling that one.
Yeah, close your eyes and pretend like you didn't hear that. Close your ears too. But anyways, the next one here goes to Rob McGuffin, who puts in the 28. And thank you very much, Rob, for that $28 support. They said, what do you think about this bill in Congress, H.R. 1936, to prohibit funds for the armed forces to engage in operations to invade or seize territory from Canada and Greenland?
I generally have to say, I'm not really for like I don't really think this is a hidden secret or that this could be that big of a take. I'm not at all for invading Canada. I think that's ridiculous. So I'd really be behind that for that reason. They're an ally and major trade partner of the United States, so it would make absolutely no sense at all to ever invade Canada and take it. So I'd be behind it on that degree. And as far as Greenland is concerned, literally everyone and their dog went up there to go make an actual concerted effort to defend Greenland from any kind of an invasion. Like a lot of countries have stepped in on that, including the Danes. They have upped their military spending in defense of Greenland. So there really is no point in taking it at this point at all. Like if the security concerns were the reason why we were taking it, those have already been addressed and fixed. So there's really no point to do that either. So really, to be honest, I would have to say that those are things that I'd largely be behind not allowing military funding over if those things were to happen. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion, because I'm all for the United States stretching our legs on, say, Iran or socking the Chinese. But doing something to Canada and Greenland is not within our interest because Greenland is aligned with Denmark, which is an ally, and Canada is it is the largest trading partner we have, and it's also one of our allies. So that would be detrimental to American and Western interests. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for the support. And Enforcer Matt said those are some Great Danes. Many people know that I only put Great Danes in my administration. Look at all of them. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and pretty decent little thing going on there. Not going to say that out loud. That's more locker room talk. But beyond that, those are the only kind of people we pick. Do they know what they're talking about? Absolutely not. But do they look pretty decent? It depends on your preferences, but to me they look great. As the actual guy, the guy who puts everything in gold, we cannot call it the American Iron Dome. We have to rename it to Golden Dome. Which I gotta be honest with you, sometimes I wonder if I have a golden dome myself. People have been saying that there's so much intelligence in there. It truly has to be made of gold, and I'd have to say that I cannot disagree with them. Excuse me, Mr. President, who were those people saying that? I will not tell you that. What organization are you with? You're full of shit. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
What a stupid question. How stupid. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Flash1, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Flash, for that support. And he said, hey, Enforcers, it's amazing how one person can cause so much unrest, not just global, but at home, talking to the neighbor over the fence. So love that neighbor, and great TV show. And live chat question, please, and LSA.
And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it really is something. Like, you just never think about it these days, how much people invest into a certain person they've never even met or know. But it is a really interesting thing to see nonetheless. So with that, I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question, which goes in honor of Flash One. This one goes to Magic Forest. He says, "Is Poland really stepping up its support to Ukraine as being claimed?"
From what I've heard, it appears that they are. So the answer to that is yes. So with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that somewhat well. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Old Buzzard, who puts in the 10. And thank you very much, Old Buzzard, as well, for that support. He said, "What are the plans?" Let's see. I think there was a typo in the middle. Let's see. I think he meant to say, "What are the plans for the Europeans planning to bridge Ukraine?" Old Buzzard, I think this one might have gotten mashed up by the autocorrect, I think, because I'm not really sure what this was trying to say, because it says, like, planning to bridge Ukraine airspace withhold. I'm not sure what that means, but Enforcer, do you see it and do you know what that means?
Unfortunately, at this moment, I do not know what that means. Perhaps we can circle around to that or synergize on it, so that way we can make sure to get the answer to that question at some point in the future. But I hope that does address that somewhat well. And oh my goodness, I will have to teach you. Well, they already got banned, but someone said, "Why don't they do the voices of the other guy, like Biden?" It's like, well, we did for the past.
I do. Are you not
Wait,
listening
wait.
or something? Or what are you on, cocaine or something?
Like-
I mean, come on, man. Why you're shaking? You're nervous.
We did that for the past 3 years when he was president. So there's a new president now, which means that we have new subject matter, and that means we're going to do his voice because he's in charge. Kind of like the last guy. When he was in charge, we did his voice all the time. Apparently some people didn't know we were doing his voice, like a handful, but most people knew what we were doing.
What are you okay? I mean,
Are you all right?
Do your kids want to know about the aliens that? Anyways, are you okay? I mean, did you get the shot? I mean, excuse me. I mean, anyway.
I mean, we literally have a clip of on Patreon, like, to explain that, of Matthew doing a Biden impression talking about Greenland. Like it's not like we've held bars against the last guy and we're just going all out on this guy. Like, we did that voice all the time for 3 years, and now we do this. And like, I'll be honest, people deliberately make themselves blind on that kind of stuff because we are fair with our jokes. Like, whoever's the president, we're joking on him, and so. Like, when it was the last guy, then it's funny to these people, like, who have, like, a political bias towards the current president. And then when we do the current president's voice, then they want to act like we've never done the voice of the last president. Why are you picking on him? It's like, no, it's like, sorry, like, I don't pander to people like that. It's like, that's what we do. We kid on the person who's president. Like, it's a fair thing. It's across the board. That is why, as president of the United States, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to hand it over to an even better president. And that'll be me, Mr. President. I'm President Nixon, and we're going to wiretap Watergate. Like, we're so back. Like, it's such a way. Hang on, Matthew. It's like, we're going to bring America back. That's why I brought Richard Nixon. America, we are so freaking back. Like, we wiretap Watergate. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, could you imagine if Nixon existed as the president today? Oh man, then he would not have a need for people to be wandering around Watergate building with flashlights. There would be no need for that at all because you don't even have to show up physically anymore to do that. But anyways, jumping into our next one, this one goes to Jenkins USA, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jenkins, for that support, and we appreciate it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support means a lot and helps us keep this channel running. And so with that, thank you once again. Hope that was addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tornadoes, who puts in the 10. And thank you very much, Tornadoes, as well, for the support. He said, "Ellis, everyone, and Enforcer is the best channel."
And I gotta thank you greatly for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running and saying that we are the greatest. Because I'm not a crook, and we like to run this channel, we really do. And so with that, I thank you greatly once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brandex, who puts in the 10. And thank you very much, Brandex, for that $10 support. They said, let's see here. Oh goodness, Brandex. This one gets a little bit too deep with the politics. Sadly, I can't read this one. But yeah, I can't even really comment on it either. I'll be taking a side pretty strongly. But thank you, Brandex, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you, Brandex, for the support. Someone said, Can you do Reagan? Well, this is my best impression, Nancy, and I thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, I wouldn't be able to sell missiles to Iran and give the money to the Contras. So thank you once again. I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one. I hope that was good,
And this
by the
one-
way. Like, I hope that was good. I don't know if it was.
Indeed. And this one goes to Tornadoes, who puts in a 10. And thank you, Tornadoes, as well, for that support. Once more. They said, where is Russia getting all these drones and supplies? And thank you.
Russia is producing the drones domestically. It actually doesn't take that much to produce a drone. So they're largely producing all of these internally. In fact, they're not even Shahed 136s anymore from Iran. They're actually technically called Garan 2s, and they're produced inside of Russia. It's just that we don't call them that on the channel because a lot of people got used to the Shahed name, and they're the exact same drone. So with that in mind, there really is no reason to try and change the name. But it's a very easy thing to produce. That's why they were able to make a decent number of them. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, oh, by the way, I got to clarify Matthew's live chat. That is 100% a joke. Like, that is 100%.
That's why it's the winking face behind it, by the way.
But just, I was wanting to make sure, just in case people miss context. But y'all should know better. Y'all are all wrong on the egg prices. I gotta tell you that if you put tallow on your eggs, they'll be cheaper. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here is going to go to, let's see here. This one's going to go to Richard Hawkins. He just threw in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Richard, for that $20 support. He said, is it true that Christians are being murdered along with the civilian Alawites on the Syrian coast in the violence during the past few days?
I've heard that there has been religious targeting that's been going on, so I would largely have to say that probably is true. But I do not have exact details and information beyond it being a absolute massacre. It doesn't even really look like in some cases that they're really differentiating who they're attacking and massacring. It really looks like they're just picking prime targets at this point. But it's a horrific thing. It's a crime against humanity what they're doing right now inside of Syria. And we thought that it was going to get better. It's actually as bad as it was back then. And so with that, I hope that does address it well. Thank you once again for support, though, Richard Hawkins, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jay Fitzarelli, who puts in a 10. And big shout to Jay for that support. He said, Peter Zahan expressed Sweden has a badass military. Any input?
Yes, they do. Sweden's military is entirely homegrown and self-made in terms of the equipment that they use. And as far as a country with Sweden's GDP, which I will show you right here, Sweden GDP, of only 585 billion. Man, look at Switzerland up there, almost at a trillion. That's honestly
what are they doing?
wicked. Dude, Switzerland just, banking. It's something like that. But Switzerland has an insane economy. But Sweden's is actually pretty good as well. But it's really crazy to see a country with their kind of military, with their kind of GDP, which is actually, mind you, almost identical to Israel's GDP, producing everything in-house, including their own aircraft. It's actually very impressive. So they actually do have a badass military, in my opinion. But what is the Swiss economy? What is it, man? I don't mean to get distracted this late in, but what the hell is their main economic output? Industry and services.
That figures. Oh, well, services is 76%.
Yeah, that's crazy. I bet you the banks have to be included in services. And their main...
It says machinery, chemicals, watches, textiles, tourism, banking, insurance, pharmaceuticals.
Interesting. Yeah, so that kind of lines up. But unemployment was only 1.9% in May of 2023. Holy smokes. Nobody's unemployed in Switzerland. I mean, with the cost of living there, you couldn't be unemployed. But that is whack. And they have a 5 million strong labor force. So that's about the size of the entirety of Alabama's population. Really impressive stuff right there. And only 6.6% of the population lives below poverty. In 2014, I'm sure that number has decreased since then. Really cool stuff, but I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. But let's see. Well, this is a bunch of charts. We can't read charts. But look at that. One of their main export partners is Germany. Well, actually, one of their main export partners is Germany, and then the second is the United States. And then their main import partners is Germany and the United States. So they're pretty lined up with their cards there. Their main people that they trade with is Germany and the United States, pretty much across the board. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Enforcer Dog Jaya, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Enforcer Dog Jaya, for the support. They said, I've had a terrible year so far. I got the whirlybird, tooth removed, bit by a dog, almost killed by tornadoes twice, basement flood, transformer exploded, gas leak, water pump died. I hope y'all are doing better than me. Honestly, I'm sorry those things have happened, by the way. Honestly, your year has gone pretty good, actually. Even though those are bad things, it's not gone too bad in the scheme of things when you consider everything else. So good luck to you. But Enforcer, what say you?
Sounds like it's been a tough year, but honestly, we sometimes we've been through hell and back, kind of like that behind the scenes. We don't even really bring it up that much, but still, it could be better, but it's not terrible. So not that bad. But I would have to say that so far our year has been filled with somewhat less calamities than that. But I hope that things continue to get better for you. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brandex once again, who puts in the 10. And thank you, Brandex, for the support. He said, I sure hope that Mexico doesn't decide to take Texas and California back. Oh, trust me, they're not taking anything back. Like, trust me, Texas is not going to be putting up with that. Texas would curb stomp Mexico by themselves, I would say. But Enforcer, what say you?
That ain't happening. That ain't happening. I can tell you that. That ain't happening. That's all I can say. But still, thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Stream Addict, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much to the Stream Addict for that support. And they said, let's see here. Sadly, this one got too political. I can't read this one either. Stream Addict, but thank you for that support, though. We appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Of course, the comment did get a little too political, so sadly we cannot address it on air. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hokey Redneck, who throws in, I believe, the 4th or 5th super chat tonight. Huge thanks to Hokey for that $20 support. He has a hood review for us. A question: is Alabama or Arkansas better? I'll be honest with you, Hokey, I don't think we've ever been through Arkansas. If we have, it's been on an interstate for a very short little time. So I can tell you between the two, I really can't tell you what Arkansas was like. I can tell you what Alabama was like, but I can't compare it to Arkansas, sadly. But Enforcer, what say you?
Alabama, it's a rougher place. There's some nice people here and there, but rougher place. I've never been through Arkansas. Matthew's correct in that. We've never been through Arkansas to really know. But I have not heard good things about Arkansas. But I don't know if that stands up because the person I've heard that from was there like 30 years ago. So I don't know if it's gotten better or worse. So I sadly cannot really give a comparison there. Because one thing I've learned is that if you haven't really traveled somewhere, you really can't talk about it because you really don't know if what you're saying is true or not. That's why, I've generally always assumed that New York City was pretty bad. Now I don't assume that anymore because I used to assume that Los Angeles was absolute hell and terrible throughout. And then I went there and saw that some places were rough and some places were really, really nice. But really, honestly, even the roughest parts of LA didn't even get close to what the middle of the road looks like in Alabama, which was the weird part about it. Like, there was a lot more homeless out there, I would say. But still, it looked nicer. So it's a little bit hard to say if Arkansas is bad or not because I personally have to go there to really know. So unfortunately, I'd have to declare ignorance on that for now and just default to saying that Alabama is probably as rough as Arkansas, I would assume. But still, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ari Sowini once more, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ari, for that support. They said train set, seed fund, and would you get electric or steam?
And I thank you so much for the support, Ari Sweeney. And as far as I'm concerned, I usually like diesel electric the most. But if I had to pick in between electric or steam, I probably would pick steam because there's a whole bunch of cool ones that they make. And they're just so expensive. I will never touch them because they're really expensive. But I would pick steam, and I'd probably do something like a Norfolk and Western kind of a Allegheny Mountain sort of a thing, like with the Alleghenies and all that cool thing. That would be a really cool kind of layout to make. But right now, I am absolutely focused on trying to make a Louisville and Nashville layout from the 1960s based around kind of like an Alabama themed layout. That would be really cool to me. So there's going to be a decent amount of Alco RS3s and U-boats and other kind of GPs, EMD GP series, the Jeeps series locomotives on that kind of layout. That would be pretty cool. But the problem is I actually don't have enough room to make that layout. So right now I'm kind of like in the process, I guess, calling it bulking, which is getting everything, and then hopefully one day I'll actually be able to like make that layout happen. That would be pretty cool. But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, Ari Sweeney, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Octavian Timarasanu, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Octavian, for the support. They said, did you know that the names Wales, Walloons, and Wallachians are linked? They are Germanic exonyms for Latin Romance language speakers. In the case of Wales, the Saxons mistook the Welsh as Romans.
And that's very interesting. I didn't know that. That's very interesting, as a matter of fact. And I thank you for sharing that with me, because I don't think I knew that one. I think that's new information to me right there for sure. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And right now, someone said CIA for sure. And, well, I wish. Well, actually, I'm happy that we're not, because we probably would have been laid off by now. So, we wouldn't be running the show. Furloughed, laid off, laid, either one. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Boy, who puts in a 9. And thank you very much, Boy, for that support. He said, what if mineral proceeds in Greenland benefited locals, Denmark, and NATO in that order? Passage, supplies, budget secured, and see no Russians sad.
Maybe so. Maybe that could be a thing done. Who knows? We will have to see on that one. That's an interesting idea, though. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a 9 from Gladiator. And thank you very much, Gladiator, for the support as well. They said, does the U.S. provide imagery to Russia via some of our private satellite companies?
I haven't heard about that yet, but I've heard that that's been considered. And if that was being done, that may be done in secret where we wouldn't know publicly. So for now, I'd have to say we haven't heard of that or know about it because we haven't gotten any actual information on it. So with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bob Anon, who puts in an 8. He puts in 2 $8 donations, and thank you very much, Bob, for that support. He said, when do you think Russia will launch a mass casualty event on the U.S. that blames Ukraine, claiming it's revenge for the U.S. cutting weapon supplies?
Probably, like, if that ever happened, it certainly would be within the next few months. It would be a very short span of time. But I'm not really sure if they'd ever do something like that. But they may. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that has addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And Bob's second super chat said, all of the confusing global geopolitical decisions and actions right now make perfect sense if you accept that the situation is a little bit interesting. I'll have to leave it at that.
And I thank you for the support, and I'll just have to leave that for what it is, because I think I missed the context on that one because of how it ended. But still, thank you once again for support, and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Brian, as well, for that support. This one gets political. I can't read this one either, but Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Badger Bro, who puts in a 5 and says, between NATO and Russia, who has the most logistical donkeys, and will donkeys be in the 2025 Moscow's Victory Day Parade?
I think the Russians would have more donkeys or horses. I don't really know how many they have on either side, to be entirely honest. But I assume that they probably would just have more, simply because they have more people. So it would probably mean that they just have more of them for some reason. But I don't think donkeys will ever be included in the casualty report. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Burnaby Alex, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Burnaby, as well, for that support. He said Poland's Anders Army existed in World War II.
And I know what you're talking about. For some reason, I can't remember anything but the name. But I know what you're talking about. And I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ram Arms, who puts in a 5. They said, Qatar funds the Muslim Brotherhood. Everything they do is about bringing down Israel, and they are funding a lot of propaganda to stop the U.S. from attacking.
Wait a minute, Qatar actually funds the Muslim Brotherhood, like the people who talk about Yaqub and all that? Like,
True?
I don't know, like because generally in the Middle East, everyone labels them as like a terrorist organization. So I don't. Let me go pull that up. Is that real? Like, Qatar Brotherhood. Let me. Let's see. No way. Actually, yeah, they are like the major financial backer.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, that explains why they're running interference then.
That is wild because if y'all don't know anything, the Muslim Brotherhood, like I'll just be honest, it's a really stupid organization. Like it, honestly, like as far as I could see, it's like almost purely racist in a way. And also someone said I thought Yakka was a meme. No, that's like an actual like teaching of their group. It's just bizarre. Like I would suggest that you look into it a little bit because it's a real thing and it is like I personally don't have a good overview of their group. Like it's a group seated in hatred like really any other. So that's actually wild to hear that Qatar is the major financial backer of that group. I would have to say with that in mind, I'm not really a fan of Qatar. And I'm happy that I've never gone there in my life and I probably never will. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Sly Mannequin, who put in a very generous $20 donation. And they put in their first ever super chat, by the way. And thank you very much, Sly, for that $20 support and deciding to support the channel tonight. We appreciate that. They said, LLT, LSA. He said, getting personal. We'll see. You fellas think about having a family yet? Strike me as great future dads, and thank you for that. He said, we need smart, level-headed parents raising the next generation. 41-year-old with a 5-year-old putting you on the spot, not getting any younger. Honestly, both me and the enforcer want to have like proper families one day. It's just these days, like it's just a little bit more difficult than I think in the past days. Not for personal reasons, just a society like perspective. And I won't get too deep into it. I don't want to complain too much, but I think there's a disconnect when it comes to mindsets between young people these days as to what they should expect and what's realistic and what's not. And also, a little bit of morality as well. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect on all of that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that yes, I think about that a good deal, and hopefully I'll be able to keep working towards that. It's only up and up from here, I'd say. But Octavian Timorsano said, you guys already have the dad jokes. You see, I'm already ready for it. I'm prepped and ready. But still, thank you so much once again for support, Sly Mannequin, and thank you for your first super chat ever. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Krusty Hen, who puts in a 4. And thank you very much, Krusty Hen, for that $4 support and helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 4 from Fishside, who says, like, sub, share, super chat, true fitty.
Could I have a tree fitty? But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to David Malone, who puts in a 2. And thank you, David, as well, for that support. He said Charles dressed as King of Canada this week.
Charles dressed as the King of Canada this week? Did he? Did he? King Charles?
Did he? No, did he?
Oh, no, did he?
No, did he?
King of Canada. Let's take a gander at this. Let's see here. Let's take a gander at this. Oh wait, this is his official portrait. Well, it looks all right. I don't know if it looks all right. This one honestly looked better.
Well, poor fella. Going through some health issues. Probably that's why he's sort of looking like that. But
oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, he's got the cancer. Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. Yeah, I totally forgot about that. Actually, now that you bring that up, that's actually a very unfortunate thing. Actually, crazily enough, actually 2 royals are afflicted with cancer right now, which is a pretty sad thing. I think he's going.
One's cured.
Yeah, one is cured because I think she went through the more official way. I think he's going through a holistic approach, which I'm not really sure if that'll work or not. And some people are going to say, oh, that sounds stupid. I'm honestly not a big fan of that either, because there was a guy like that in Austria-Hungary back in the day, and he got bit by a rabid dog, and they said, oh, we got treatments for that. He said, no, I'm going to treat it with water. And he just poured water over the wound every day. Well, he died from rabies. So, it's like sometimes those kinds of medical approaches do not work. Hopefully, though, it'll work for him, because it's very unfortunate to hear people passing before their time. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. Very interesting to hear. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, big shout out to Clank Clank, I'm a Tank, who put in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Tank, for that support. Also, huge shout out to Blazat as well for putting a 2 also. And we appreciate it very much, Blazat. And also, huge shout out to both of you for that support. Well, and with that, folks, guess what? That is our last super chat of the night. And once again, huge shout out to everybody for supporting the channel once again with the super chats and helping to keep it running. And also, if you haven't already, smack the like button because we're now moving into our live chat segment. And tonight, we are getting the Morse code first, like always, actually. And tonight we had the entire roster. It was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps, Aurelio Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Joni Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse code for today says Russia acting like a big boy and then getting slammed by dozens of drones. LLT, LSA.
And and that's the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate you greatly for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And we wouldn't be able to get that Morse code message. And so with that, I congratulate y'all greatly on that once again. And with that, we actually have a flood of new super chats coming in. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right. Also, by the way, don't forget, folks, tonight is daylight savings time. I just forgot that until just right now. The time jumps forward, I believe, an hour at 2 a.m. EST. So that'll happen here in another hour or so. So just popped in my head real quick. But anyways, our next super chat goes to Sully Canuck, who puts in a 10 Canadian. And thank you very much, Mr. Sully, for that support. He says, stay the course, lads. I'm still with y'all. And that's a Canadian y'all, as I do live in the south of Canada.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support. I thank you for the kind words, Sully. Good to know that you're still with us. A Canadian viewer, a member of the LSA through and through. And I got to thank you for that, because some people, I got to say, I thank you, Sully, for having a level head. We've always said things that I think are very good on this channel, like towards Canada, towards multiple international allies and friends of the United States. And for some reason, while some people have heard that for years on this channel, they then want to take it out on Matthew and me, like we are the U.S. government. Like some people, like we've actually gotten these in the background. Some people will message us emails where they cuss us out and then say that they'll never support the channel again because we're bastard Americans. And it's like, what did we ever do to them? Like, it's like we've only been nice to these people, and then they just want to go off on us like, oh, I really got them good. It's like, no, honestly, it's like, you know, you just kind of cussed us out like we were with y'all. You know, it's like, it's kind of a little wild. But I thank you for having a level head, and I thank you for still being with us. And also really cool that you said y'all, a southern y'all from southern Canada, which is still more south than the north of the United States. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Wellness LSA Latvia, who I just realized has a profile picture of the LSA flag mugs that we did on the merch store. Very cool, by the way. And he put in a €10, and thank you very much, Wellness, for that support. He said, hello, enforcers, and how many Ukrainians fought in the Iraq War and other wars, side by side NATO soldiers? And P.S., I'm working in farms close to Russian borders and probably going to go to sleep in the first day of invasion. Uh-oh.
Oh, well, I thank you for the support, Wellness LSA Latvia, and also how many Ukrainians fought in the Iraq War. Well, a couple of hundred of them. There was a couple of hundred of them there during the Gulf War, I believe, and then there was a couple of hundred of them there during the invasion of Iraq in 2003 as well. So there was actually a decent amount of them, but they weren't really fighting. They were more so a peacekeeping force, and also, let's see, and other wars side by side with NATO. I believe NATO peacekeepers were also involved in Serbia, and I think that, well, Ukrainian peacekeepers were also around. I think that's really it. I think it's just Serbia and Iraq. And I think there was a couple of them in Afghanistan too. But not really a lot, because there hasn't been many conflicts that have really happened since the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and the founding of the modern Ukrainian state. So the best I could give is Afghanistan, Iraq, and Serbia. I think that's the list. But still, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And don't worry, Wellness LSA Latvia, everything will be fine. And hopefully we will see that America will still have Europe's back, much like Europe has ours. And so a big thanks to you, and a massive shout out once again. And with that, folks, we are almost running overtime, and Matthew and me are starving, and so we will be getting five, very generous tonight, 5 live chat questions, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. So what do we have for the last question of the night, Matthew?
Oh, and I'm so hungry. I am starving. I'm getting the North Korean experience. I'm literally starving. But anyways, this one goes to Barry Woodward, who said, if U.S. is still in NATO, how can we not be in unison with other countries?
I wouldn't really be able to explain that because it makes no sense at all that we would just violate the actual framework of the treaty that we've signed. There really is no way to do it without just pretty much shitting on the treaty, which would be a violation of the charter, or, for example, just going against the Congress if the Congress decided to do something instead. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the fourth to last question of the night.
All right. And this one, wait a minute, the fourth to last question.
Yeah, we were doing 5. Remember?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, okay, what? But anyways, this one goes to Cookie, who says, is it true that the U.S. president has approached Ukraine opposition with the intention to remove Zelenskyy?
That is true, and the Ukrainian opposition, Poroshenko, and the actual opposition leader both came out and stated that that had happened and that they were not behind that or supported that because legally that would be a violation of their constitution because they are not allowed to have elections in wartime according to their own constitution. The answer to that is yes, that actually did happen. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Purple Gerbil, who says, how can a country facing challenging economics, meaning poor, how can they afford 3 to 5% GDP of defense spending?
They can because it's 3 to 5% of their GDP. Like if you have $10 and you spend 10% of $5, you're meeting the GDP spending percentage. If you have $500,000 and you're spending 5% of $500,000, you're meeting the GDP spending quota. That's why it's a GDP percentage spending quota. They're not saying every country has to spend $500 gazillion on the military. What they're saying is that you have to spend 5% of what you have, so that way you can, build up a proper military for your size. That's how it works. So really any country, including a middling or poor country, can afford it. And I know that because Greece is the poorest country in the European Union and in NATO, and they're spending, I think it's like 5.3% of their GDP on the military. So it is possible and it can be done. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, with Germany voicing concern over Russia attacking NATO, will this make them even less willing to give Ukraine its Taurus 2 missiles?
I'm not entirely sure. It may actually make them more so want to, so that way they could see that the war largely stays contained in Ukraine. It doesn't really spill out into Europe. So it may be a motivator for them to actually give over those missiles based on the prior logical frameworks that they've laid out in their minds in the past. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Peace with War, who says, if NATO countries strike fast and hard, even if Russia would threaten nukes, could they achieve military objectives large enough to push Russia to the negotiating table?
They probably would push Russia enough to go to tactical nuclear weapons, because when going up against a nuclear country, they're not going to ever say, let's back off and let's start giving concessions. What they're going to say is, we want a white peace or we're killing everyone. That's really what a nuclear country is going to do when you threaten them that badly. So that would be a good idea on paper, but in practice, it probably would turn out a lot worse. Because then at that point, what do? Do we say we're going to keep the war going when we know they're going to start flinging nukes because it's going really badly for them until they go to the negotiating table? At that point, they have no incentive to go to the negotiating table because it's either all in or nothing for them. They can either get a white peace and go right back to the way things were, or they could kill everyone. And at that point, there really is no way to negotiate with them, at least in that kind of an instance. But that's still an interesting idea. But beyond that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream at exactly 2 hours and 30 minutes in. Actually, it's 2 hours and 29 minutes, but by the time we round this out, it'll be 2 hours and 30 minutes. I have to thank all of you so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover the news for all of y'all. And we've been able to see that tonight we reached a peak viewership of 9.8 thousand people. Truly an amazing and impressive number. And we were able to get 67,000 people on stream before it ended. I thank you all so much once again for the support and all of y'all watching tonight and hitting the like button. And we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And also to run the Sunday night fundraiser. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army will never die.
And thank you all for the good stream, y'all. And we are now going to round out the stream. It is now 12:31 a.m. Yeah, it's 12:31 a.m. I don't know. That's throwing me for a loop for some reason. The daylight savings time is messing me up. But anyways, thank you all to the 67,000 plus people that watched tonight. And we appreciate having every single one of you here. And also shout out to the LSA, which is the best pro-democracy community on YouTube, I must say. And once again, thank you all for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for the fundraiser stream on Sunday, where we'll raise even more money for a good Ukrainian cause to make sure that the people are taken care of inside of Ukraine and that we're doing our part to help out. And with that, folks, once again, Slava Ukraine, Hear 'em Slava, get some rest, and good night.